What's up, Sammy Rose?
You think it should just get thrown out? It's not a real case.
No, I think there's probably going to be a lot of discovery to Sax's point that's going to show that they probably did
Yeah, the discovery is
deliberately
going to be
try.
juicy.
Yeah.
No. I'm not saying that. I'm asking you more that even if they find it, your point is it shouldn't matter. My point is,
Yeah,
do you
I
think
don't
that
think
it
it will.
should be thrown out?
Well, I
Yeah,
don't know. I mean, hold on. Let's say you're casting a movie and you can't get Scarlett Johansson for it, and so you tell the casting director, "Get me a Scarlett Johansson type." I think you can do that. Okay, obviously
Yep.
you can't use her name, you can't use her likeness, but you can hire a different actor
Yep.
who might look or sound like Scarlett Johansson. If the company actually did that, and they did it 9 months ago, this is what the statement they put out. I think they've got a decent defense.
Yeah.
But
Because they may
to
they
Tomas'
may have
point,
done.
I don't know if we believe that. I mean, again, why don't you just put out the name of the
Yep.
actual actor, that voice
Well-
actor that you used?
And there's a very simple test here. If there's confusion amongst the public, which is what ScarJo put in her letter, and that was a legally written, definitely written letter to set up a huge settlement. Because she said the morning this came out, all of my friends said, "Oh my God, congratulations on your ChatGPT deal. This is great." The public being confused is the key issue here, and there's something called the right to publicity. This is basically how celebrities defend their rights. It's happening all the time to podcasters, by the way. There was a company that put me in their ads based on something I said in a show, and then they put ads against it. And Huberman's been having this happen. Joe Rogan's
It's happening to me right now. I'm in the middle of this
to you too.
crazy thing
Yeah.
with Facebook, and they've been doing a very good job. The team at Meta, Ashley, thank you. But hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of automated accounts pretending to be me, selling all kinds of random stuff. It's predominantly on WhatsApp and Facebook and Meta, and I don't know what to do because we work together with them. We shut it down. I've actually had to reactivate my Facebook and Instagram accounts, which were dormant, so that we could actually have them be verified, so that then it's easier to shut them down. But it is an impossible task when somebody's impersonating you.
Yeah.
To fight it. At least
In
in
this
my
case-
experience, it's been a month, and it's
But
just like every 100 we take
Yeah,
down,
it's
another 1,000 pop
whack
up.
But in
Whack-a-mole.
both
It's a
in both
whack-a-mole.
of those cases, you guys have your exact image of you being shown
Yes.
to sell stuff. I think that in this case, it's also unique to ScarJo because she was the voice from her. There is
Yes.
no like if this were like a voice sort of like Cameron Diaz or sort of like Julia Roberts, it wouldn't be as big a deal because it would certainly got some differences to it. But it's because they're trying to mimic the movie Her.
Well, didn't Meta use Morgan Freeman when like Zuck created like an AI or something as a project? Do you guys remember that? Wasn't Morgan Freeman the
and
voice?
They paid for it, and
They paid for it.
There's a company, Speechify. I'm not an investor or anything like that, but they have Gwyneth Paltrow as a licensed voice to read your stuff. So
They
if-
should just license Gwyneth's voice.
obvious, like just whoever wants to get paid, here's the opportunity. If three people
But
say
what do
no,
you
the
guys
fourth
think
will say
about
yes.
the fact that they're not trying to say this is this person's voice, but they want to say like, hey, let's say you just can prompt the AI and say generate a voice that is sort of like movies that are comfortable and calming to people to listen to, and that we think people will be comfortable. And the AI generates something that sounds like
I've said
ScarJo,
this before.
but it's not deliberately trained on ScarJo.
Using a computer to probabilistically copy something is still copying something.
Yes.
Come on, guys, let's not make this too complicated.
Is the public confused? Is the only test you need for you.
What if there's two public actresses that
Okay.
both have similar voices, and then they both claim, hey, you tried to make this sound like me? What do you do in that case, Jamal?
Well, which one did you call 2 days before the demo?
Yeah, exactly. And did the CEO tweet her?
I think your whole point about discovery is what is going to get them in trouble in this case because they were clearly trying to do an impersonation of her, right?
Yeah,
Like,
if they never reached out to Scarlett, they
Yeah.
could claim it's just a coincidence. But they called her twice.
Yeah.
They called her
come on.
some months before and then 2 days before, which indicates panic.
Judge Sachs, give your verdict. I'm starting a
Judge
new spin-off
Sachs
show.
says
Judge
that-
Sachs says
Guilty.
Okay,
call-
guilty on all charges.
They
Judge
call-
Sachs, sentence now. What's the sentence?
The sentence is that Scarlett Johansson's going to end up owning more of this company than Sam Altman. That's what's going to happen. Look, they call her 2 days before. Why do you do that?
Guilty.
Because you know you have a problem, and you're trying to put the horse back in the barn. Now, what they should have done is, as soon as she says no, you just change the voice completely.
Or you get a fixer. Get Michael Cohen in there and get a settlement going. Let's get some fixer in there to fix it. Okay, listen. Enough with OpenAI. Oh wait, there's more drama. It's ruining the docket. I guess we have to talk about the next drama from OpenAI this week. Former employees sign an agreement that they're forbidden forever from criticizing the company or even acknowledging that the NDA exists. If a departing employee declines to sign the document, or if they violate it, they can lose all vested equity they earned during their time at the company. In practice, this means ex-employees have to choose between giving up millions of dollars they've already earned or agreeing not to criticize the company in perpetuity.
Well, I
Sachs,
can
there's a
see
lot of
why-
details here. Or
No, but
Chamath,
you-
yeah, we'll go to you. Yeah.
Well, you can see why they wrote that in there. That makes sense if you think, hold on a second, if an employee can leave with, you know, a random copy of like some old weights as a starting point to rebuild the model, that could be very valuable. Or there's
Well, that's
all
IP.
kinds of
Yeah.
but there's all kinds of like kind of quasi confidential information or knowledge or know-how that you leave a place like that with. So I could see why there was a justification to be very heavy-handed about it. But again, the question isn't whether you're allowed to be heavy-handed. You are. The question is why backtrack and then obfuscate and lie after you get caught.
Well, right. What do they
that's the
say?
cry.
They claim it's an accident. Once they get caught
Yeah.
with their hand in the cookie jar, which, like you said, your mouth is just a heavy-handed agreement. It's in the company's interest to do this.
Yeah.
They just say it was an accident, just like the Scarlet thing's an accident or a coincidence. It's just getting hard to believe.
Just own it and say, you know what, guys, this is a really valuable company. There's a ton of very valuable, great secret know-how, IP, confidential information, and we're going to be extremely
Litigious.
on the offense and protect it because
Aggressive.
and it's correlated to the importance of the company and the ecosystem. You could have said that and people could have been upset, but they would have understood.
Here's what Sam Altman said. There was a provision about potential equity cancellation in our previous exit docs. Although we never clawed anything back, it should never have been something we had in any documents or communication. This is on me. And one of the few times I've genuinely been embarrassed running OpenAI. I did not know this was happening, and I should have. If any former employee who signed one of these old agreements is worried about it, they can contact me, and we'll fix that too. Very sorry. So he's very, very sorry. It's starting to be like BP Oil, this company. Like, they're just so sorry about everything.
Here's the question is, these are form documents at the end of the day, and form documents don't write themselves. Lawyers write them, and when you get a novel in one of these documents, somebody thought that through and thought it'd be a good idea and put it in there.
Right.
And like Tomas said, there is a way to potentially defend that. It's not like these provisions don't exist. It's just a novel application to try and claw back someone's already vested equity from a company
Well, that is
on
not.
behalf of these things.
Yeah, that is not exactly standard. Sometimes
No,
it is,
that's
sometimes
completely
it isn't.
non-standard. I'm just saying that
Yeah.
these provisions exist in other contexts, and their application as a clawback of vested employee equity is something that I don't think any of us have heard before. So,
I haven't. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. So my point is just, this didn't happen as an accident. Somebody made a strategic business decision to do this because they thought it'd be in the company's interest.
Yeah. So just in layman's terms, the clawback means you had 10 million in equity. You earned 75%, 7.5 million in equity. You say something disparaging about the company, they can take it back from you.
Once you leave a company and you vested equity, you don't lose it. I mean, as long as you have some period in which to exercise your option, if it's an option rather than stock. But other than that, I've never heard of a situation where employees can lose their vested equity.
Even in a situation, Zach, we've seen this, where somebody commits fraud, they still get their vested equity, and then it's up to the company to sue them for fraud separately, right? We've seen instances of that. Yeah. But committing a crime.
Look, I think the question here is it credible that they keep having these accidents and coincidences?
What does Judge Sachs say?
Judge Sachs says there's one too many coincidences, and you know. Look, I think like Tomas said, you could have just owned this and said,
Yeah.
that this is exactly like you said, and said, but you know what, it was too aggressive, and we pulled it back.
I think the thing is, look, if you think about the pendulum of culture in Silicon Valley, you used to have a very tough culture of founder-led businesses where there was extremely high expectations, and if you transgressed, it was very difficult. And then the pendulum swung to the all the way to the other opposite end, where you have this like toddling daycare that existed for like the last 15 or 20 years. And probably what OpenAI is a company that needs to be run a little bit more like the former, but stuck with a bunch of people that still pull it towards to be the latter. And that's the cultural tension that they're going to have to sort out, because in order to be this incredible bastion of like AGI and innovation, I suspect that it's going to look more like a three-letter agency in terms of security and protocols in the next 5 or 10 years than it is going to look like the Googleplex. And I think they just need to own it. And this is probably a little bit of an insight into that tension. And they're going to have to go more in that direction.
I think it's a good insight.
You're not going to be allowed to build these incredibly crazy world-beating technologies where people are running around in an 8-seater bicycle. It's just not going to work.
And
Guys.
Have engaged the enemy.
Because Scarlett Johansson is so sympathetic as a plaintiff compared to AI. And it's, you know, unless they show us some discovery that they really provide what's at all rights, this could lead to some very bad precedents for the industry around fair use.
Well, and here we go. I think Microsoft will pay the speeding ticket, and we'll just all move on. But Freeberg, my God, can you imagine like being 2 or 3 PhDs in, you know, machine learning or whatever? You study your whole life, you're pursuing general AI, and people are coming up to your desk and creating all this drama and nonsense, and you're in the middle of a soap opera while you're trying to create the technology that creates super intelligence. It's nuts.
Yeah, I find it annoying too, just listening to it.
Okay, well, then in that case, we will move on to OpenAI. Oh, sorry. There's one more drama going on.
It's not just drama. I mean, there's now a lawsuit. I think it's a very interesting case.
Their use case is interesting.
I think it's a legitimately interesting case that's gonna, if it goes all the way, if it goes the distance, it's gonna create some really interesting precedents.
Well, I mean,
And I'm not saying we have all the facts yet, but
yeah, what happens in these content cases is they get settled almost every single time. So the case law doesn't get codified; they just get settled out of court. You go look at all the fair use cases. So this one will be settled. It'll just be a question.
I think
what price.
the interesting part of the other story is that the reason all this stuff came out about the Equity Clawback was because the safety team quit.
All right, so this is the third dramatic story of the week that will
And I
go
think
on.
that
So let me Ilya announced he was leaving the company. He was their chief scientist. A few hours later, his partner on the alignment team, Jan Leica, also announced he was resigning. Later thread, Leica explained that he left due to, quote, safety culture and processes had taken a backseat to products. Okay, there's a little bit of disparagement to our former point about non-disparagements and NDAs. So, OpenAI lost both its head of AI alignment one day after it launched that new product. Is that a coincidence? It's interesting. If you don't know what Supermind is, basically making sure that the software doesn't go Terminator.
Research.
I don't know. I mean, it could be some bad bureaucracy, bad politicking, not being listened to. But I think the real interesting question is certain regulatory people who are going to have interest in the fact that this team just left. They're going to make a phone call. They're going to ask this team to come in and have a conversation, and they're going to start to ask a lot of questions about what the state of technology is over there. And I feel that things are going to start to come out.
Sax, it was reported that Ilya was on the side of the nonprofit, the slow down AI, be cautious group when they fired him. So, what's your take on what's going on here?
Let's call this what it is.
Your
Mass
warriors
Apparently, they were promised something like 20% of the computing resources of OpenAI. And again, I definitely read that somewhere. And so that is a whole story. And when you look at this issue of the mass representation, and then you
Your
look at the
warriors
issue
have
of
engaged the enemy. Base is under attack.
you're like, well, wait a second, maybe they felt like they needed that callback in order to
Upgrade complete.
Right.
whatever. Something clearly accepted, right?
Yeah. That's why people are saying this needs what it is.
Yeah, and then, like you said, the board did fire him, and the only explanation they provided was that he wasn't handled for it, which at the time we thought was an incredibly damning statement. And we thought we'd get some explanation of it. We never got any explanation whatsoever. I thought that the board was being incompetent because I thought
Upgrade
that either
complete.
they fired him
Mineral
for
field
the
depleted.
or they had reason to fire him, but then they communicated poorly. And you add all these things up, and it definitely seems like a lot of smoke.
Base is under attack. Mineral field depleted. Your warriors have engaged the enemy.
The AI train continues on Wednesday.
Mineral field
NVIDIA
depleted.
reported earnings for the fiscal Q1.
Research complete.
Revenue was $26 billion, up 18% quarter-to-quarter, 260% year-over-year. Basically, they quadrupled year-over-year in billions of revenue. This chart is bonkers. We've never seen anything like this in the history of Silicon Valley or corporate America. This is if somebody literally was mining coal and then found a diamond and gold mined underneath it. It's bonkers what's happened here. When you look at the revenue there, sort of slow growth or moderate growth revenue that they experience is all because
Your
NVIDIA
warriors
was
have
primarily
engaged.
companies like Microsoft, Google, Tesla, OpenAI, etc., buying just billions and billions of dollars worth of hardware. Was NVIDIA. Today, NVIDIA is the third largest company by market cap behind Microsoft, head of Google, aka Alphabet, and Saudi Aramco. Shamath, what's your take on this?
Have engaged the enemy.
And how do
Mineral
you
field
conceptualize
depleted.
this level of growth on such a big number?
I think this is a incredibly fun moment if you're involved
Mineral
in
field
anything
depleted.
AI related, just because it shows the level of investment that NVIDIA's customers are making into making this.
Have engaged the mineral field depleted.
More on power. You're talking about $500 billion, $750 billion a year being spent to bring AI forward to the masses. So I think that's the
Upgrade
positive take. The other exciting thing is if you're on the other side of the NVIDIA trade, which is you're working on something that does what they do
Mineral field
cheaper,
depleted.
faster, or better, it's also really exciting because at some point the laws of capitalism kick in, right? We've talked about this when you are so massive. The
Mineral
rational thing to
field
do for other
depleted.
actors actors in the arena is to come and attack that margin and give it to people for slightly cheaper, slightly faster, slightly better, so you can take share.
Yes.
So I think what you see even more now is this incentive for Silicon Valley, who is just reticent to put money into chips. They're going to get pulled to invest in something. There's no choice. You have a company that has market cap to 2.5 in 4 years. That's too much value that you can back. Which is really mostly the 90s, right? It ended in the late 90s, I would say like 98, 99, right before the dot-com bubble took over. Intel's peak market cap was, I think it got to about $200 billion. And their average growth rate from 1998 to today was negative 1.4% a year. Right? So it went from about 200 billion to about 130 odd billion. And why? It's not that Intel was a worse company, but it's that everything else caught up. And the economic value went to things that sat above them in the stack. It went to Cisco, right? Then after Cisco, it went to the browser companies. Then it went to the app companies. Then it went to the device companies. Then it went to the mobile companies. So you see this natural tendency for value to push up the stack over time.
So let
And
me
in
ask you
AI,
then.
we've done step one, which is now you've given all this value to NVIDIA, and now we're going to see it being reallocated.
So
Right now, what you do is you speculate on anything that's kind of like aligned with NVIDIA. So AMD, the company, all of that stuff, the folks that make optical high bandwidth optical cables, ripping. So anything related to that ecosystem right now is at all-time highs.
Research.
But at the same time,
Base is under
what
attack.
we find now is like every other day when they come and read the things that'll allow you to actually build one compute environments. So all of this stuff is starting to happen. At some point, the spread trade will be that NVIDIA loses share, even though revenues keep compounding. To these
Compares NVIDIA to.
Your warriors have
Or asked
engaged
the
the
question
enemy.
about whether a historical comparison should be made is Cisco. So there's an article in
Your warriors have engaged
saying
the
is
enemy.
NVIDIA to be the next Cisco. There's one in Morningstar. You can see that Cisco had this incredible run. And if you overlay the stock price of NVIDIA, it seems to be following that same trajectory. And what happened with Cisco is that when the dot-com crash came in 2000, Cisco's stock lost a huge part of its value. Obviously, Cisco's still around today, and it's a valuable company, but it just hasn't ever regained the type of market cap it had. The reason this happened is because Cisco got commoditized. So to Chamath's point, the success and market cap of that company attracted a whole bunch of new entrants, and they copied Cisco's products until they were total commodities. So the question is, will that happen to NVIDIA?
Yeah.
And I think the difference here is that at the end of the day, the networking equipment which Cisco produced was pretty easy.
Pretty one-dimensional.
Pretty easy to
Moving
copy.
data around, yeah.
Right. Whereas if you look at NVIDIA, it's these GPU cores are really complicated to make. And Jensen makes this point that the H100.
Okay, I just got incredibly lucky. I didn't see the
and it weighs like
Nidus.
pounds or something.
If I see the
like that.
Nidus, he
It's like
just
a
loses the game.
I mean,
It's like a mainframe. It's not just like a little chip.
It's completely.
It's a
He's
much
completely
more
all in there.
copy, and then on top of that, they're already in the R&D
Okay,
cycle for
let's
the next chip, right? Or whatever it's going to be, the H200 or whatever it is. And so
try to get lucky.
people
He's gonna try to get
catch
lucky.
up
What
with
can he do?
H100, they're going to be onto H200. So I think you can make the case that NVIDIA has a much better moat than Cisco. And just by the way, on this Cisco comparison, this
Poor
has been
play
so
by
long.
me, not
We were
scouting.
making this
but
comparison 6 months
Very
ago.
lucky by him.
And what's happened since
Especially
then?
with
NVIDIA's
Phoenix
had
is
two
out.
outgoes,
To go for a Nidus
and
like
the
that
competitors
is
don't
kind
seem
of
to be that
just
much
asking
closer,
to
maybe
lose
a
the
little
game.
closer, but so, you know, look, I think it's an open question.
So there's a counter here, Bluebird, which is obviously, if you follow the Cisco analogy, one of the things that also some Cisco was once people had bought all that capacity, there was no need, there was no file size that was so great that it couldn't be moved easily around the internet. You know, you make movies HD, Super HD, 2K, 4K. The bandwidth created too much bandwidth, there was no use for it. So I guess that's a counter argument for maybe when, if we build up too much capacity, NVIDIA also could, not my competitors, but try to build out being enough. So what's your take on that counter argument? And then whatever else you have.
I think that the Cisco analogy is a pretty different situation because Cisco evolved the business to become much more enterprise-centric, and they were able to run an M&A process like we see with enterprise software, where they could acquire and roll up lots of different product companies and sell into their enterprise channel, so do a lot of cross-selling. NVIDIA is not a super acquisitive business, and it doesn't make as much sense because they're selling much more kind of infrastructure tools, whereas Cisco moves really in the enterprise stack. They were selling stuff into office buildings, they were selling software, they did acquisitions to kind of fully integrate. So they had a very diverse set of products that were selling through an enterprise channel, further up the value stack, and a pretty distributed customer base, no serious concentration. Even though they did sell a lot of data centers, they were also selling to telcos, they were selling to enterprises, they were selling to governments, and so on. If you look at NVIDIA's revenue, they did $26 billion in total revenue in the quarter, $22 billion of which was data center, and about 40% of that was from the top 4 hyperscalers. So a full 1/3 of NVIDIA's revenue in the quarter came from, I believe it's Google, Amazon, Microsoft, and Meta. And so between those 4 businesses, you know that those companies each have, I believe, at least over or close to $100 billion of cash sitting on their balance sheet. They can't find great places to invest that cash to grow revenue. And so they've rationalized away the idea that they will make CapEx investments to build over the next 5 to 10 years. And this is where that money flows.
Yeah, we talked about that in the previous episode because there's no M&A. To your point, Amazon's not going to buy stuff, or the UK's not going to buy stuff.
So I think that they're going to have less maneuvering capability than Cisco had in the future, and obviously there's this deep concentration risk, which is going to be deeply challenging.
I think NVIDIA, this is to build on Sax's point, is going to get pulled into competing directly with the hyperscalers. So if you were just selling chips, you probably would. But Sax is right. Like these are these big, bulky, actual machines. Then all of a sudden you're like, well, why don't I just create my own physical plant and just stack these things and create racks and racks of these machines?
And
it's
go
not
head-to-head with AWS instead of selling to them.
It's not a far stretch, especially because NVIDIA also has the software integration. So I think it's likely that NVIDIA goes on a full frontal assault against GCP, Amazon, and Microsoft. That's going to really complicate the relationship that those folks have with each other. But I think it's inevitable because how do you defend? It's kind of the Apple problem. How do you defend an enormously large market cap? You're forced to go into businesses that are equally lucrative. Now, if I look inside of compute and look at the adjacent categories, they're not going to suddenly start the competitors in TikTok. But if you look at the multi-hundred-billion revenue businesses that are adjacent to the markets that NVIDIA enables, the most obvious one is the hyperscalers, which are multi-hundred-billion-dollar revenue businesses. So they're going to be forced to compete. Otherwise, the market cap will shrink, and I don't think they want that. And then it's going to create a very complicated set of incentives for Microsoft and Google and Meta and Apple and all the rest. And that's also then going to be accelerant. They're going to pump so much money to help all of these upstarts, to your point, Jason, chip away and nip at the Achilles heel of NVIDIA until they fall.
Yeah, and there's a great precedent for what you're saying because, of course, Amazon is making chips, Google is making chips, and in fact, Apple,
Tesla's making chips.
yeah, and then
Apple's rolling
Apple,
chips.
and can tell. And so this is under attack. Opportunity. All this market opportunity to this market to be able to expand the one. How old is he?
He looks amazing.
Dude, how did this happen?
What do you
No
think he does
plastic
for
in his balls.
exercise?
No plastic. Plastic balls.
No. His balls have plastic.
No, he's got his have brass.
No, his
literally has
balls
brass.
No, all of the balls have plastic.
Well, we have two choices here. We can go with another tech story, or we go directly to science.
Your warriors have engaged the enemy.
And then do science.
So you want to talk about our pocketbooks, and then we'll talk about our pockets, and then we'll just take a quick detour to the right, and then talk about our laws. What do you say,
Balls.
He likes to start with the balls.
Man, I mean, I can't believe I didn't have a whole position.
Think we're in a
Zer-
recession.
He just like got so lucky here again. Incredible.
56% of Americans wrongly believe the U.S. is in a recession. Not surprisingly, they blame.
I don't know. I guess I accidentally put all three of my adepts on my hotkey instead of just the two.
It's obviously not.
Gosh dang it,
56%
man.
think the U.S. is experiencing recession. It's obviously not. 49% of people believe the S&P 500 stock market index is down for the year. It's up 12% this year. It was up 24%.
This guy's just the luckiest fucking dude I've ever seen.
Believe that unemployment is at a 50-year high when it's in fact at a 50-year low. And Americans are really concerned about the cost of living and inflation. Fair enough. 70% said the biggest economic concern was the cost of living. 68% said that inflation was the biggest economic concern. Important quote here. A majority of respondents agreed it's difficult to be happy about positive economic news when I feel financially squeezed every month, and that the economy was worse than the media made it out to be. According to the poll, 70% of Republicans and 40% of Democrats think Biden is making the economy worse. Chamath, you have some thoughts on this?
I'm going to go out on a limb and speculate that a lot of the big numbers that we use to gauge how we should feel about things in today's day and age are pretty brittle and fragile and may actually just be totally wrong. So what's an example? So for example, like if you look at something like non-farm payrolls, right? So the first Friday of every month, you get this report that comes out from the Department of Labor, and it shows where unemployment is.
I keep misclicking
You think that they have a real-time sense of
my hotkeys, so that must have been what happened.
Or exited the workforce? No. They do
I
a
misclicked my
survey.
hotkey and
And if you do that survey incorrectly, and Jason, you've commented on this before, for example, if you don't capture adequately the number of people that are on the sidelines and never join the workforce, or the number of people that are part of the gig economy, so they are kind of working, you get an inaccurate sense of where the real economy is. I think that GDP is somewhat similar. Because if you just break down what GDP is, so Nick, there's a very simple pie chart I sent to you. What is GDP? It's the sum of four things. Most of it is what people spend.
Okay.
Then the next big chunk is what companies and
Your
governments
warriors have engaged
spend.
the enemy.
And then the last is what we export. Let's just pause for 1 second and think about, what do you think happens when rates are 0 versus when rates are 6%?
People spend a lot more.
Well, people tend to save when interest rates are high. Just the natural thing, like, why would I buy a pair of these Nike shoes? I'll just put it in the bank, I get 6%. But when the bank pays you 0, you're like, let me buy these Air Force Ones, right? It turns out it's the same for companies. Companies find it easier to invest when rates are at 0 because it's cheaper. It's much more expensive because they're borrowing money at 6% versus at 0%.
Or more. Corporate gets charged a higher fee, right?
Then when you have high interest rates, you have a currency that appreciates, it makes exports less attractive to other people.
Oh my god, dude.
There was a chart I published in my annual letter, if you just go to it.
And just going back to the chart right before, just so people who are listening, before it's given, consumer is about 70% of the economy, but investment and government together, that's just over 34%. So it is a consumer-driven economy, but hey, corporate and government spending is a major piece.
Your warriors have engaged the enemy.
And I just wanted just to highlight that interest rates are very high. All of a sudden, governments are faced with this very difficult problem, which is, oh man, I have to spend a ton of money on this. Just like if you had a bunch of credit cards and all of a sudden the interest rates went up. So the choice is twofold. Do governments spend less? But unfortunately, it turns out that our government in America, they just keep spending more and more. So even if net interest income is small, even if net interest income is high, they're just like, forget it, the taps are on. So what does this all mean? I think what it really means is that we do a very poor job of measuring all these dynamics together. And so I actually trust the survey data of these individuals more than I trust the GDP report, in the sense that I think it more accurately captures this dynamic. Rates are at 6%. People are saving more. They're not getting paid more. Things are costing more. The government is giving you free money, so you kind of feel like everything is moving. So that the GDP measurement, the way that it's classically done, shows that, wow, we grew at 3 or 4%. But the average individual American isn't feeling that. They're actually feeling that they have less money. So I would actually go with them and actually say, if we don't revisit this thing from first principles, we're going to get this dynamic. We think one thing is happening, but the actual exact opposite is happening. In this case, I do think we're in a quasi-synthetic.
Sax, what's your take on the vibe session?
I can agree with Bob on this. I think this is a classic story of who do you believe? Do you believe the experts or do you believe in the intuition of the American people? And the experts have some statistics on their side, but the old saying goes, "You're wise, analyze the statistics." And then the American people have their actual lived experience on their side. They know what they're feeling. And I tend to trust in that. And obviously,
Research
we're in
complete.
an election year, and the press knows that, so they're trying to do this big cleanup effort for Biden. But why is it that people feel this way? Number one is inflation. And if you look at this chart, you can see that if you look at household net worth, at a similar point in Trump's presidency, in nominal terms, it appears to be the same. But then if you adjust for inflation, in other words, you look at the real household net worth, you can see that household net worth during the Biden has been
Your warriors have engaged the enemy.
because inflation.
Where did the inflation come from?
Where did the inflation come from?
Yeah.
Well,
Mineral
Larry
field.
Summers warned in the first quarter of the Biden administration that if you passed an unnecessary $2 trillion of COVID stimulus, you would produce inflation. The inflation rate when Biden came to office was 1.7%. And we talked about Bidenomics is this new policy of pumping trillions of dollars of stimulus into a healthy economy we've never done before. What happened? Inflation went all the way to 9%. So people's wages have not kept up with the rate of inflation. Despite the look at purchasing power, people are worse off in terms of their actual ability to buy things. Their purchasing power has gone down. Wages may have gone up a little bit, but they have not gone up as much as inflation. So people feel worse off. Now, Gary also had that, I think, really informative study showing that inflation would have peaked at 18% if you include cost of living. So again, to Jamal's point, if you're trying to get a mortgage and it's 7.5%, 8%, you feel way worse off. If you need to buy a car to make a car payment, you feel much worse off. If you've got credit card debt, which is now at an all-time record of something like 1.1 trillion, your credit card rates have never been higher. So the average American feels worse off because cost of borrowing has a huge impact on their household finances. And that's why if you read story, the average household they may not have lost their job, but
They're under-earning. They're under-earning. And so the
so this is
projection...
obvious. And you know the press can gaslight us all day long about how wonderful things are under Biden, but the average American
Base is under
attack
attack.
based on their own experience.
I think the whole thing comes down to the projection of an individual's of their lived experience onto the economy. You assume that because you're having a tough time, the economy is bad. And the economy has how do I say it? And things are more expensive. My ability to purchase
Mineral field.
I'm going to end up on the same take on this one. I mean, Nick, if you want to hold this image up, disposable personal income relative to outlays, that folks are needing to spend more than they're making. So clearly indicating that they're feeling like they're under-earning. So the projection of that is the economy is bad without recognizing that it is an inflationary
Mineral
experience.
field depleted.
Whereas economists use the definition of quote, economic growth.
What's up, Pilly? Dude, carriers, go. Oh my god.
Mineral field depleted.
GDP goes up, but the debt is going up higher. And so the ability for folks to support themselves and buy
I just can't believe how lucky this guy is. This guy is crazy lucky.
declined. If things are getting worse. And if you go to the next image, as Sachs pointed out already, here's the image of total
Base is under
outstanding
attack.
credit card debt, over $1 trillion. It's totally spiked, and it's going to continue to spike, just like federal debt, because of the next chart, you'll see a sudden jump in interest rates. So we've seen credit card interest rates jump from 12% on average 10 years ago to 21.19% right now, and it was at 14% at the end of 2022. So we've gone from 14% credit card interest rates to 22% now in just about 20 months. And so the projection of the economy that we've had is resulted from the fact that income to spending that is negative. So here's the real median family income is actually only goes to because we can capture the but the average American's ability to improve their condition has largely been driven by their ability to borrow, not by their earnings. And this has created a substantial set of precedents that we're running into a wall because of the overall federal debt that we've taken on.
I think we're probably going to go around.
Where'd he go? What, you lose your...
Obviously, the crazy spending.
Why can't I
started
s- oh,
from
he's just
the
in,
COVID
though.
era, and that caused a lot of the inflation. It's two administrations that are just out of control with spending. The way I see the Mickey D economy, people may not know this, but 96% of Americans own at least
Your
one
war
This is unbelievable. Medium price rises $1.79 increase with chicken, 129 to 389. And then here is a very interesting
GG.
Big Mac prices. Take a look at that. As much as the consumer price index has surged, Big Macs have exceeded that. And so Americans are seeing this over and over again when they go to McDonald's and other places. And that's what's causing the feeling.
Jake,
Because
go
when you
back to the
spend,
chart. Go back
Yeah.
to that McNugget chart. I just want to see what is it, end of 2019. So this is basically you'd want to look at the 4-year stock price, right?
We're
So,
getting
like, these
just
guys
A
have
moved
jacked up
over and
prices.
over again.
massively.
If you
Fun
look at what's
times.
happened to the stock is way up. It's kind of been they've been very motivated and rewarded as a company for just rewarding the shareholder and kind of screwing over customers.
You own equities in McDonald's and you're in the top third or half, but maybe half of Americans who have equity exposure, you're feeling great. If you're on the bottom third or half and you're buying at McDonald's and you don't own equity in McDonald's, you feel terrible. Freeberg, you had some additional thoughts?
Yeah, but remember what McDonald's and other fast food companies have said is that labor costs have climbed. Here's a chart on labor costs that Nick can pull up. Workers at Walmart and McDonald's have had pay increases, but this has really been to try and keep up with inflation, the inflation of other costs. So a lot of people
Alright.
say, oh, they're price gouging.
Only wins.
They're ripping off consumers to make profits for shareholders. But the truth is, the biggest component of running those restaurants is labor, and labor has gotten more expensive because the employees that work there have to earn enough to pay their bills and to afford their bills.
Only dubs from here on out.
Circular effect.
You heard it here first.
It finds its way all through the economy, it filters down, and it eventually hits everyone.
Look, fast food's a pretty competitive business. I mean, I think the reason why McDonald's is raising prices is because everyone else is raising prices. I mean, otherwise they'd be losing share. And just go to the grocery store and look at the price of steak or chicken or whatever, or eggs. It's gone up tremendously over the last few years. I mean,
Sax, let me ask you a candid question. When's the last time you were in a supermarket? Be honest. When's the last time
I'm not
you
saying that
literally went to a I'm
Your
just curious.
warriors have engaged the
it's not
enemy.
relevant. I mean, yeah, obviously we know that the price of eggs doesn't affect the egg rate. I'm in a fortunate position. That's not what the topic is. The topic
Yes.
is what is the impact of American people?
Your warriors have
Why
engaged the enemy.
70% of the people in that poll feel that we're in a recession, even though the experts tell us we're not? And I've explained it.
Yeah, and the other thing is, there's
I went to the
people
supermarket
conflate.
the other day.
I like them. I take my
I go
girls this
every
week.
week.
I could not believe how expensive
Your
things are.
warriors
Some
have
of the stuff,
engaged the
I was
enemy.
just blown
It's
away
bonkers.
how expensive things. It's bonkers.
Look at the pocket
I went to try to find one here in San Mateo. There's none left. They said them off quarter to month.
I went to Protoss. Not in 19, no, not in 19, but we like buying
Baited.
They like to pick stuff, but you know,
Only
it's
dubs.
back to $7. I'll tell you quite honestly, I'm like, I think that you need to put these guys on notice.
Oh, on blast.
The perfume, so the nose, like just like it's incredible. Okay,
aroma,
the
yeah,
smell
yeah.
is the aroma. It's just absolutely incredible.
Yeah.
But to be totally honest with you, the mouthfeel and the sweetness is not what this label would imply.
Yeah.
What were you
And so-
expecting in terms of mouthfeel?
I was expecting like something juicier, more succulent.
Let me ask you a question, Tomas. Do you have a sommelier for your fruit?
Yeah,
I mean, you seem like a real connoisseur here.
Yeah,
Did you
do you
do
have a
tasting
Josh?
notes?
No, I've
fruit
been
sommelier.
texting. I've been texting Greenberg about this for months. I am a connoisseur of fruit. Okay, it's very important to me. I like good fruit. So you know,
warriors
as I
have
go on
engaged
so Greenberg,
You need to get
if
the
you can,
Hokkaido.
if you can let GMO strawberries, I'm gonna put it in that bag. GMO strawberries, Greenberg, that's good, sweet, kind of sweet. Get in my bag.
I think we should all go to Tokyo for a weekend and do some fruit tasting in Tokyo.
You
can
have
the
to
best
get
fruit
on the
in the world.
Hokkaido strawberries. This is where it's at. You have no idea like what you can spend on strawberries. People are spending $10 on a strawberry. It is bonkers.
I thought $100
Incredible. You know, the other thing I think with these numbers is if you're an economist and you're like, inflation has gone down, that means the rate of inflation has gone down from 6 or 7% down to 3%, 3.9, 3.1. That doesn't mean prices aren't still going up. And so
Right.
the
By the
question
way,
is, how
if
do
you wanna
these cycle
If you
down?
want to replace GDP, there was a very good article in the Wall Street Journal a few weeks ago about how there's been just a total
Your
breakdown
warriors have
in
engaged
what
the
high-level
enemy.
numbers say, kind of what we've been saying, and how
Dude, I'm
Have
just
engaged the
they
enemy.
so
use
messing up with
a
my
different score. Well,
oracles.
they use a couple to stop their score.
Such an important part of
Something that is
PvZ.
called a core score.
Okay.
And what that does, I'll just read it to you just so you can understand it. It's a county level index of well-being using measures of economic security, economic opportunity, health, and political voice. And so the lowest possible score is 0, the highest possible score is 10. As it turns out, when they use this across every county in America, the distribution is basically as follows. The most quote-unquote prosperous county is Falls Church, Virginia, which is 7.86 out of 10. And the lowest county is Jim Hogg County of Texas, which has a score of 2.25. So to the extent that you want to start to look at granular measures, this is one. I'm not going to advocate for it, but it's an example. But what are you noticing here? What I notice is that there's a lot of patches that you cannot hit in most parts of America. And so other than a very few small pockets where people feel great, most of the country is sort of dissatisfied. I think that that's a really important thing to
people do focus on the negative, the media focuses on the negative, and then on social media, people are seeing lifestyles that are unattainable, just like they're seeing body types that are unattainable. People are doing filters, you're also seeing people living unattainable, and then it makes people, because
Yeah, sweetie, what's up?
so high, then subtract their life, they've got a deficit. And really, happiness is like expectations minus reality equals happiness.
Yeah, but you had that same dynamic when consumer sentiment was much higher in previous administration. People were feeling much better about it. So that's a constant.
Yeah, well, people were having free money
I think
dropped
you're
on their
trying to-
head. Trump dropped free money on people's heads. So you're calling that Biden's
way.
crazy at spending?
No, I'm
Trump
talking
sent
about
them free
before
checks
COVID.
with his name on it.
Yeah, when the
So-
economy was down 30% year over year.
But you admit that
and
he
both
spent way
parties-
too much money.
Base
right?
is
You
under
admit he spent
attack.
way
both
too much
parties,
money.
an enormous amount of money. Absolutely. There's no doubt in my feels like they actually lost their stuff. But I think
Exactly.
that's right in the sense that, so if you take that as a constant,
Your warriors
right,
have
that
engaged
there
the
will
enemy.
always be handouts now. Depending on whether you're a Republican or whether you're a Democrat. Democrat, but so then this abstraction though doesn't start happening because this free money is in the system, it's constantly in the system, it comes in different ways. So people should feel better. The fact that they don't in the face of this constant money train, I think is actually quite alarming. This is I think what the point is, which is we are economically in a very complicated moment in the sense that there is no pandemic to blame. There's no economy that's totally shut down. In fact, there's an economy that seems to be moving. The enormous number of people that a lot of it has been structured. Just sitting here today in 2024, it's broken for more people than it's working for.
Yeah. Trump, just to give facts, Trump will have spent $7.8
You're missing the fact
trillion.
that when we
Your
had
warriors have
the
engaged
COVID
the enemy.
down 30% year over year.
Yeah, terribly timed tax.
Listen,
Your
just
warriors have engaged the enemy.
make this one point.
Yeah, go ahead.
Just because both parties have been irresponsible in spending doesn't mean that we can take further discussions.
You're saying qualitatively Biden's is worse because he didn't need to. Is that
There was
what
no
you're
crisis.
saying? Right. Okay,
were
I got it.
completely
So
out of
one
it.
spent more, one spent less, but one didn't need to, and
No,
one absolutely
look
did.
at Trump's spending
I got it.
before COVID. Look at Trump's spending before COVID. It was like a 5% bump on Obama's spending.
Well, the tax break is the
Got 'em.
that accounted for a lot of. Yeah, but anyway, we can sit here and debate Trump versus Biden. All
Let's
day
talk
and
about my
be-
balls, boys.
Yeah, we're wasting time here. Wasting time on Trump and Biden when we could be
Let's get to
talking.
my ballon.
If we're going to talk about our balls, we need to go to somebody who's an expert on our testicles. Freeberg, let's
Our
go
balls
right
have
to
been on your
Science
face.
Corner. Let's talk about our balls with the Sultan of Science. There's been a study on phthalates, our balls, and plastic in our balls.
Yeah, the Consumer Report put out a really interesting,
What's up, Happy Stick?
become pretty widely covered now story a couple of weeks ago, where they measured phthalates in common foods. And Nick, if you want to just pull up the image, that's been repeated in a lot of media, a lot of press. People are going nuts over this. Phthalates are compounds that are used in plastics or used with plastics to soften them. So when you make plastics, you can kind of make them softer and form them into alternative pH.
just woke up.
Phthalates are
Grind. Grind, dog.
Go along
Rise and grind.
that are the basis of the plastics. And they measure things which are known to be toxic in terms of if you get enough of them, they can be carcinogenic and cause cancer. And they show that every product they test has phthalates in it. Wendy's chicken nuggets had, 33,000
What's up, Adonis?
serving. If you scroll up to the top,
Look at the Chipotle chicken burrito. Oh my God.
and just to be clear, guys, this is not just about packaging. Packaging plays a role, but the whole food supply chain, the way we wrap food, all of our water, all of our dust, all of the air we breathe, we have measured phthalates in everything. So
What's up,
these
Soren?
phthalates end up in the animals that are used to make milk and the animals that people eat. They end up in the water that goes into the vegetables that we grow in the ground. They end up being used to make the little plastic jars that we feed our kids out of, the little yogurt pouches that our kids drink out of, everything, just to move food around in plastic
But
packaging.
sorry, Creeper, why would the chicken nuggets from Wendy's though be so? Is it because they are eating
They're eating things that have plastics in them.
plastics in them,
But we also don't know.
and so then
what
we're
goes on,
eating the chicken, so we're eating the plastic.
we're eating the plastic, and it's also the fact that the way that they process the chicken and the material that they use and the packaging that they use and how they move this stuff from one place to another. You got bags that are holding chicken breast that then get put in the thing, and then the oil has the oil is transported in plastic. We don't know.
So it's plastic
But-
all the way down.
It's
Guys, look at
plastics
this.
all
I mean,
the way
like
down.
these are the things like
Base
look
is
at
under
Annie's.
attack.
First of all, I really dislike Annie's labeling and packaging. I think it's very ugly, so I've never bought it for that reason. But I know that there's a
This is a
lot of
robo.
baby moms that buy Annie's. because
Almost
it's
certainly.
supposed to be better.
Keep going, Chuck.
No, this is a really good point.
Yeah.
Hold on, Chamath's making a really good point. Go ahead, Chamath. This is really good.
And so the problem is you see organic when you go like we go to Draeger's. That's typically where we go. Sometimes we go to Whole Foods, but we go to Draeger's and Sagona's. That's the places we go to in our neighborhood. And when you go and you look at these things like
warriors have
Nielsen
engaged
as an
the enemy.
example, the thing that has always attracted me to Annie's is because it is positioned as it is cleaner, better for you. And you see everybody buying it. What you actually see sitting on the shelf that's left over is actually Chef Boyardee and the Campbell. And I always thought to myself, I won't buy Annie's because I actually don't like the label, to be honest. That was really why I did just deeply dislike the packaging. But it turns out it's the absolute worst for you.
Yeah.
It is. And let me just tell you guys let me tell you guys some stats about this. So we produce about 3 million tons of phthalates a year, creating them that we use in our industrial supply chain. The global market is like $1 billion per year. We find this everywhere. In our tap water, as measured in the U.S. in multiple places, there's about 1 microgram. So those were nanograms, kind of divided by 1,000. So that Annie's thing has 50 micrograms of phthalate. There's about 1 microgram of phthalate.
Have engaged the enemy.
Now, this was done out of Germany. Basically tried to
Really? with different parts
Your
of the
warriors
endocrine
have
biological hormones. And they basically showed the mechanism of how this is disrupting. Now, what is the endocrine system? Production of hormones with cells in your body produced by by all these different glands in your body, like your thyroid, your pituitary gland. Body temperature, blood pressure, sleep.
I was too slow, man. Should have just gotten a robo faster.
And so when the
Couldn't find his robo. Unlucky.
are disrupted by these phthalates, it can actually disrupt those systems and mess them up.
I was
So while
floating so
we're
much money because I
generally speaking, enough phthalates to cause cancer,
forgot
and
to build
therefore we all say, hey, it's okay,
robo
these phthalates aren't that bad, we're not going to all die from cancer.
for like quite a
The
bit.
truth is, there is demonstrations now on how they can
Like
actually
literally, I
affect
should have
the
just
immune
stayed in my
system,
main.
and as a
I
result,
shouldn't be
have all these
down.
deleterious effects. Another study done on 125 men out of China. This paper was done out of China. They saw damage to testicle cells that would die, testicle cells that would produce fewer sperm, and then testicle cells.
Dude,
that
how do
would
people
produce
play
sperm
like
with
this
extra
every
nuclei.
game?
And they actually demonstrated this.
All they see is just all in every single
The set
game.
of compounds can be fairly disruptive. So now we'll go to the next story, right? And the next story is the one that everyone's writing about, which is, oh my God, there's plastic in balls. So a team at University of New Mexico
Look at the same build.
published in the Journal of
Robo
Toxicological
proxy.
Sciences just last week. They took 47
Robo
neutered
proxy.
dogs' testicles from a local pet clinic where they were getting neutered. And they found on
Very
average
cool, bro.
128 micrograms per gram of microplastics in those testicles. And it was mostly, polyvinyl chloride or one of the main plastics and polyethylene.
Just gotta play better.
And again,
Not lose to stupid shit like
leach
that.
out of these plastics and leach into the cells. And then they went to the medical investigator's office and they found.
I was just like,
the
I didn't
testicles that
start my
were
robo.
7 years because when they do a medical investigation and
I
they
wasn't
perform
building void
biopsies,
rays.
they keep 'em on
I
ice.
kept my units on the low ground, which is a
They
huge
move away.
mistake.
They got
Humans.
permission
Could have just kept them on the high ground, if I lose my nexus.
to figure out
It's not the end of the world.
and they measured it
In the frozen balls.
in the frozen balls.
These are
My
ancient
brain
frozen
just
balls.
wasn't
How old are these balls?
processing what was
23
going
frozen
on.
balls, about 7 years old. Yeah.
Okay, 7-year-old balls frozen.
Wait, are people donating their balls to science? Is that how
No,
this is
it's
happening?
like when there's like a homicide or someone, or you don't know who died,
Jeez.
or there's an investigation into why someone died. The
Got it.
coroner keeps the body parts in case it's needed for like a police case later.
All right, I just want to
prosecutorial
state
case.
on the record, I don't
Balls.
want to that way.
Okay, you don't have the frozen balls on your driver's license, like freeze my balls.
They asked me to store my balls, I think.
Yeah,
They said,
right.
you've got such huge balls. You can
Anyway,
store
they
them."
got 23 of these balls from these bodies, and they found plastics on average 328 micrograms per gram of testicle in these balls. It's
What do
a
you
really,
usually find, Freeberg? What do you usually find in these balls?
Well, we don't know because we've never taken human tissue and tried to take it apart in a very detailed way to figure out like how much plastic is there, what is it doing to our body. But now I just want to connect the dots. So now we have a sense that there's these phthalates and these other compounds that come with plastics that leak in that cause all this disruption. Separately, we're seeing this accumulation of these little plastic particles. And remember, plastics are polymers. They're long chains of monomers. And so they can be short chains, they can be long, so they break apart, and little tiny bits of them end up, and they're very hard to metabolize, and they sit in your tissue, and then they can cause all this disruption. So, I think these are like generally
I'm just
not...
going to say it.
Yeah.
First of all, I really appreciate that you did this. I think it's so important. We talked about microplastics a little bit ago. J-Cal moved his whole family away, I guess a few years ago from plastics. I've started to do it 4 or 5 months ago
But
after
you
Nat.
Can't get away from it. It
No,
is
and
everywhere.
No, and Nat
It's in the
tried to get
supply
us.
chain is your point.
It's
So
a
this
supply,
is-
it's in the water, it's in the air, it's everywhere.
This is what I was going to say. I think our food supply, I think we should just say it out loud, is totally corrupted. And I think there's all of these other factors we look at, the rise in the use of SSRIs, the lack of sexual function in young men, the lack of sex, the low birth rate. I think these are all related, and part of it is the food supply, and part of the food supply problem is the fact that it is corrupted by these materials that should never be in our body.
I want to just
I'm
push
just-
back on this because I don't
think
want
it's
to limit
that's
it.
a guess, but I
yeah.
honestly think it's the truth.
I don't want to
educated
limit
guess.
it. I don't want to limit it to the food supply because here's the other thing. All of us are wearing clothes that use polymers, which are plastics. All of us are sitting at desks that have coatings of polymers on them. All of us have iPhones that use polymers. All of us drive cars, and the rubber. One of the ways that they found that plastic these microparticles are getting in the air is through tires. When we drive, little particulates end up in the atmosphere. We
Yeah.
breathe them in.
Philly's
and then they
got
end up
all
in
the
our bodies.
buzzwords.
Every
Sounds
part of our
fire
industrial
AF,
supply
bro.
chain Uses
Billion-dollar
polymers. Every
startup.
part of our industrial
I
supply
hear
chain.
you, but the concentration, I'm going to guess that the concentration when you actually put it in your body and then your intestines and your organs are bathed in this stuff, I'm going to guess that the food supply has a huge part to do with this.
Yeah, but when you're, let's say you're wearing clothing. Almost all of our clothes now, many of our clothes have polymers in them. We put it in the washing machine, it ends up in the water supply chain. We consume that water. It's very hard to say that there's a specific action. Our whole system has been inundated with these lower cost.
Okay, then let me say it in a way that maybe you will agree with them. We need to fix something. My starting point would be the food supply.
Yeah. Where do you start? Yeah. Water.
Yeah, my big takeaway is sort of like yours, which is almost impossible to alter this industry overnight, given how ubiquitous these compounds are. Everything we do and touch, tires, phones, clothing, etc. But I think that this is going to trigger and is the beginning of a wave. I'm noticing that a lot of folks are going to start to pay attention in the food industry and start to figure out ways to represent low plastic, low phthalate food products as a way to kind of sell a more premium solution. I think that's been the trend historically with the food industry, Chamath, is to respond to your ask right now and to then show up with solutions. So I do think that that's, and just taking a step back, we don't have to use these are all based on fossil fuels. So the way we make plastics is we basically pull oil out of the ground and we turn it into these polymers. That's the basis of this chemical industry. We don't have to do that. With the same function, we can get the same function from what are called bioplastics. So these are compounds that can actually be much more biodegradable, that are made with biological systems and not made from oil using synthetic chemicals systems. So I do think that there's a really big opportunity for a wave of bioplastic alternatives, given that this is now becoming a little bit more obvious to folks that there is this kind of systemic problem, that this is ubiquitous, and that we do need to kind of address it.
Okay, so just zooming out here for a minute, talked about the phthalates, but what about the BOFAs, Freeberg? The study on the BOFAs.
Let me play in. What are the BOFAs, Jason?
Nobody's nuts.
Well done. That was really well done. That was really, really well done.
Yes,
You nailed it.
Oh
Oh my God,
workshopping
so
that
good.
before the show.
I was like, what is BOFAs? I have BOFAs these nuts. That's awesome.
Try not to
That's
start
really-
laughing before you deliver the joke next time.
trying.
Jeez.
Oh
Right.
my God. That was
Where's
really
the air
good.
horn, Nick? Play the air horn.
That
No,
was
okay,
really
but let's
good.
get serious here for a second.
I have a real question. Part of the thing that I think is broken is that I think somewhere along the way we got screwed up in how food is labeled, right? And then it was gamed effectively, right? So for years, even when I was growing up, I thought you should not buy food that was high in fat, as an example. And little did I know I was ingesting all these sugars as a substitute to fat. It was a total mistake. Does the labeling need to become simpler and focus on these things that are just fundamentally carcinogenic for us? 1, 2, are there like lawsuits that need to happen a la cigarettes where you kind of connect the dots between these phthalates and a bunch of these diseases? Because it just seems like people have thrown their hands in the air for years, right? Some people say autism and diet are correlated, right? Other people, so they're Crohn's, the rise of Crohn's. There's so many of these conditions that there is a cohort of people that attribute most of the reason the pathology of the disease exists to food. So what do we do?
Or pesticides.
Is that your actual office behind you? Or is that a background?
It's the office.
Yeah. So, like, every one of those books is coded in some of these compounds.
No, these are phthalate-free because these are from the 1400s. They didn't have that back then.
Okay, good. All right. Well, everything else at the desk is made of all of those.
Yeah, these are collector's items, bro. These are from an era where that stuff didn't exist.
And you're pure. I'm assuming you're wearing a pure navy wool sweater.
It's just
doesn't have any
Oh,
tolerance.
whoa. Oh.
baby cows.
Yeah, but I think what's overwhelming about this problem,
right? I think gathering is viable.
what's overwhelming about this problem is the ubiquity of the problem. It's almost like asking, tell me everywhere that carbon is used. Like imagine if you had to label every
No, I know, but
M&M
that's
you're
why
eating,
I'm trying to hone you into this one area that I actually I get the tires and the this and the that. I'm trying to get to something that I fundamentally care about. I have young children. I feed them food every day. I don't trust my food supply. I've never really trusted it. And this kind of stuff adds to this body of evidence where I'm worried that if my kids go through some kind of initiative, at the core of it will actually be something dietary, and it's typically overlooked by modern medicine. Because you'll treat it symptomologically, you'll try to give it some kind of pill. It's not how you treat a lot of these things. It could turn where
I think
restructuring someone's diet can actually have an enormous impact. So I'm just trying to figure out what is something that we can all start to do to get a handle on this, because you're putting food in your body everywhere.
it seems like you're saying it's helpless here. Freebird. There's nothing we can do. And I think what Chamath and I'm asking you is like, where do we start? How can we start to get off of plastics?
I think we got to go into the source. So biopolymers are made by living organisms. They're typically
Oh my gosh, I suck.
of what are more like sugar molecules, and they can be used in a similar way that they're not going to be as good as synthetic polymers that we use today. So a lot of our applications, a lot of our industry would have to be rebuilt if we really wanted to go back to redesign the whole system. But we
No
gotta redesign the whole
microplastic
system. We're
ground
making
beef.
everything out of these products because they're cheap, and because we can pull oil
I
out
feel
of
like
the
it's
ground and turn it
impossible
into
to
cheap
do
stuff,
that.
and then it makes things affordable for everyone on Earth, and that's how this industry emerged. You know, it was not like someone randomly came along and said, let's put plastics in everything because it's going to be good for people. It was a way to make products more accessible and more available and cheaper, and it's everywhere. And so I think there's this real question of like, what industrial synthetic chemistries do we use today as a species that we should rethink using and start at that level and then rebuild from there? And I think shining a light on this stuff and just talking about what these products are and
I think
how they find their way
that's
to our system
I
is
think
really
that's
important.
laudatory but too complicated. I want something simpler, which is like, can we get a law passed so that chickens cannot eat certain kinds of food that are known to be high in phthalates?
Yeah, and here's an idea. Look at this, Chamath. Like, look at this banana. Like, just as a newsflash, a banana already has a wrap. It's called the peel. And then people are wrapping plastics on this stuff. Like, I think consumers need to demand that, like,
Why
we
did you
have
take
low
a picture of a
packaging.
banana? Why did you take a picture of a banana?
I found that on the internet. I didn't actually take it myself.
Oh, okay. I thought you were like sitting at the store
No,
photographing
it's
banana.
just, you know, when you see this kind of packaging, this is what has made me nuts in my life, is all this crazy packaging going on. And in Europe, you are required at the supermarket, and people do this when they get to the end of the counter, they take the packaging off. The supermarket has to take the packaging, right? So they have to bear the burden. So if you get a tube of toothpaste, you can take the packaging off and hand them the thing. Other places are now saying, hey, if you're coming for peanut butter or grains or flour or sugar, they have a barrel of sugar, they put it in a brown bag, and you get this like more clean experience. I think we have to have like both ends of this, the supply chain,
There's
but also consumers.
There's like a marketing.
I want my bananas to come with packaging on them.
You do, you
I
want
don't
them
want anyone
wrapped in
else's
plastic?
fingerprints. I don't want anyone's fingerprints in
fair
my
enough.
bananas.
It's on the
You
peel,
don't eat
bro.
the peel, brother. You don't eat the peel.
Yeah, but I could touch it.
We haven't bought water bottles.
I want everything to come in hermetically sealed plastic.
Yeah, but then how many people in your house handle your banana?
Pause. Whoa.
Yay.
Whoa. Did you ask him how many people in his house handled his banana? Whoa. No didn't.
No, but the real issue is not that. It's like when the girls in your family have puberty younger and younger, and you're like, why is that
Yeah.
happening? Or inconsistent periods, or when the boys go through these weird, moments where they're like not really
I
growing.
thought that was TikTok.
No, I'm just telling you, like when
There's
you
so many things that we have to panic about. It's hard to your point, it's hard to attribute.
Yeah.
To one
Yeah,
thing.
but I think the thing that everybody could get focused on is how can you correct at least the marketing versus the reality in our food supply. A different example. I remember Nat telling me something which was along the lines of like hormone-free is something that's marketed, but like chickens have been hormone-free since like the 50s. But it's like there's some latent hormones left inside of them, and then some of the feed is really poorly constructed, and should be focused on like air chilled versus water chilled or whatever. There's just so much bullshit. And so I think it's hard if you're like trying to take care of your family
Make
and
sense of it all. Yeah.
make sense of it. It's just like it
Yeah,
seems
I think
impossible.
everyone feels helpless and everyone wants to grasp
I
on
find
to
it super
something that they
frustrating
can-
because it's something that I really care about like what I eat.
Right, totally.
And it came from a place where a lot of disease in my family, and I was overweight when I was young, and so I just want to kind of like pull a.
No, I mean you eat
And it's
clean.
impossible.
You if you're eating
No, I know, Jason, but
vegetables- yeah.
my takeaway is there's going to be a lot of phthalates in my balls.
yes, absolutely.
Despite all the stuff that I do, I'm no better off than somebody eating at Wendy's in the end of the day. And I feel like, well, what is all that time and expense and difficulty? Is it's not worth it?
Well, there's other health benefits to it, of course, and there's environmental benefits. But we went all glass bottles, as I told you, and then I find out that some of the cans we have, because it's a couple of things we like certain natural sodas, they got plastic on the inside, the aluminum
Plastic
cans.
on the inside, exactly.
I'm like, I thought I was doing the right thing here by going aluminum.
Ah.
They're like,
Get rid of the
no, we
plastic.
put plastic on the inside.
Exactly.
So the moral of the story is don't try to do the right thing.
Your warriors have engaged the enemy.
But anyway, I just want to.
I think this stuff is unavoidable. I really do. That's why I'm
Yeah.
not too
I
worried
think
about it.
I think you're right, and I think that's why you see all of these kinds of diseases, these chronic and acute conditions, just ticking up, tick, 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 tick.
Yeah, well, anyway, I think this was a fascinating science corner, and I took a screenshot of Sax going. This is Sax's interest level. You can always tell how good it is.
No,
This
look,
is Sax.
I thought this was a science corner I could finally use. You know?
Absolutely. They actually checked Sax's balls for the plastics, and all they found was steel. So there it is.
There you go.
Yeah, it's just
Brass balls.
going around the horn here. What's your favorite balls in pop culture? For me, it's got to be Idiocracy. I love. Have you guys seen Idiocracy, Mike Judge's film?
I haven't seen it.
Okay, so in the film, I'll just cue this up. Society has gone to the lowest possible IQ. Everybody's got an 80 IQ, and like people, like a reality TV star is running the country into the ground. That's what he has in Idiocracy. And the #1 television show is essentially a TikTok called "Ouch My Balls." Here it is. It's basically the #1 television show in this society, this dystopian society, where
Bingo.
all the crops
Told you.
have died and they don't know how to make crops anymore. Is Ouch My Balls. It's just a supercut of a guy getting kicked in the nuts. Sax, what's your favorite ball moment in pop culture?
I agree, Glenn Ross.
All right, here it is, folks.
That's
You
Alec
have to have
Baldwin.
the.
That's Alec Baldwin.
Freeberg, you got a favorite ball clip from pop culture for yourself that tickles you? No? Samantha, you got one?
I'm gonna find one.
You got one? Okay, everybody, this has been a spectacular episode of the world's #1 podcast. It's episode 180 of the All In Podcast. With you again for the Sultan of Science, David Friedberg, David Sachs, the Rain Man. Yeah.
There's a compilation of on YouTube of all these Austin Powers moments of Austin Powers getting kicked in the balls.
Yeah, but we'll see you all at the All In Summit in September. Bye-bye.
Love you guys. Bye bye.
Let your winners ride.
Rain Man, David Sachs.
And instead, we open source it to the fans, and they've just gone crazy with it.
Queen of Quinoa. Besties are called.
Dog taking a notice in your driveway. Oh, man.
All right, next podcast.
How we doing? We'll talk about NVIDIA real quick. It's not a big part of the show. 10-for-1 stock split.
That means we're ready already? I mean, I'm on air now?
Kyrie wants to stage that
We're not
entire
doing sound check?
stadium.
We're not doing anything?
True.
The kids love the stock split still. Like, this is still...
Everybody does. Everybody does. You know, I think in all fairness, though, everybody says, you know, the value is the exact same thing. I think most of the time, at least anecdotally, you guys might have real research on this, when they do a stock split, the stock does tend to go up a bit. I think that's not that's not a bad time to trim, by the way.
Absolutely.
So I think a 10-to-1 split of NVIDIA is going to bring more buyers in. It's probably going to give another pop to the stock, and you know, it's probably something we should trim a little on.
Well, think about it this way: a stock only splits after a great run, right?
So the recent...
So it's good. It's strong stocks that split.
I agree. You know what's the kiss of death? The reverse stock split.
Yeah, you don't want to be that.
You have 25 more shares now. 25 times more shares.
The recent history of the big stock splits, though, hasn't been great because it happened during the tech bear market. So the Trade Desk did a 10-for-1. Shopify did a 10-for-1. One in 2021, one in 2022. Amazon and Alphabet did 20-for-1. You know that? That was like 2 years ago.
Apple did a while ago.
Apple did 7-for-1
To get in the Dow.
specifically to be in the Dow.
Yeah. Well, that's why they all did. That's why Google did it.
I think there's something with stock-based compensation also. I also
Guys
think
better beat the
that
Celtics.
if
That's going to be our toughest
more
matchup.
options trading activity.
I knew we had a good matchup against the Wolves just because our
They respond to incentives, and it's bullish.
Yeah.
Whether it is or it isn't, the price responds.
Luka and Kyrie just are just better than their guards.
In a bear market, that
But-
doesn't hold up.
Doesn't help.
But I think
I
in an
mean,
overpowering bear market,
Tatum and
things tend to go down no matter how
Nothing
good you
helps.
are.
Nothing helps.
Otherwise, in a
Brown.
real positive market environment, you know,
These
things
guys
tend
are
to go
pretty
up,
good.
right?
I was gonna say there's a in
So
a
I
bear
don't think
market
we have,
where
like,
you
a
get market enforced splits.
huge
Well, here it is.
advantage.
You don't get double the amount of shares, but you do get a lower
just get a lower
price.
price. That's right. Your overall value is
We'll
down.
see though. We'll see. Could be wrong about that.
Do you think Nvidia is gonna go down in history as one?
I
of
wouldn't
the
be
greatest stocks
surprised
of
if we
all time?
just played really well again, but
Like this is a stock that's up like 6,000 or 7,000% in less than 10 years, and not just that, but the size of it. This is not like a small cap or.
Phoenix?
I mean, this is
2.7
Bruh.
billions of dollars.
2.7
Going Phoenix?
ish. So number
Hello?
one, it is already one of the greatest
Nuts.
stocks of all time. But you said, Josh, you had said go down in history. So 30, 40 years from now, whether it's still one of the greatest stocks in history, I think a lot of that's going to depend on the next 5 to 10 years and what they actually do with AI.
Yeah.
And then they got to continue to have the type of leadership, though, that is never becomes complacent. And I think that becomes the kiss of death in some great companies. Over
That's-
time,
That's true. He just cut off his left and he becomes completely. What series was that where he just like they just
kind of like they have the attitude that's not the way we do it here.
made him go left and he
That-
just
that's
like
it. It's bad in
completely
athletics, it's bad in-
showed that he
it's
couldn't
bad
do
in
it.
business.
And they lose their founder eventually. And so NVIDIA still has a founder.
Now, part of that though is they've got to be well prepared that whenever that happens,
Succession planning is
right?
important.
They get hit. It's critical. It's critical. You got to bring in the right person.
The thing with Nvidia is everybody is gunning for that market now, and there's no way they'll keep it all to themselves. Like obviously, you're not gonna have a company with 35, 40% margins growing 100% a year, and no one else is gonna get in there.
They reported 79%.
I saw that.
It's insane.
I saw that.
So it's about to be, it's about to pass Apple in market cap. It's
Yeah,
hard to believe.
well, number one's Microsoft, right? Then number two's Apple. Number three now.
Now NVIDIA.
It's going to be number two is going to be NVIDIA.
60 analysts cover the stock. 7 holds, 7 neutrals, 40-something buys, no sells.
How about this?
So you guys are geniuses. So what's the difference between a hold and a neutral? I just want to educate me. Educate me.
I heard somebody say something funny today. I was down at the exchange. Somebody said, "Man, I wish I owned that stock." This, I
Hey,
mean,
Yogi Berra
Still
used to
can't
say
go
that.
left.
So NVIDIA has.
Maybe that's all they
it's got
need
a
to do.
$1
Force
trillion,
them.
almost $1
Force them
trillion
left.
that doesn't sound. One of those things. And I own both stocks, but like it just it seems like something that's not sustainable.
I am both stocks as well. I think what happens is like the market wants to get a bit emotional. It wants to fall in love with certain names, really hate certain names, and for that period, you want to take advantage. That's why I think it's important to have discipline to be training for strength. buying so long, you still feel good about the company, the value of the stock.
Stock went up 10% today.
Yeah.
Who's
I saw
buying?
it.
Who are the buyers?
Literally.
I think when something like this happens, any institutions that were on the sidelines got to jump in. I think there are people that still might have been short. If I remember correctly, when I looked at it earlier in the week, the option game on this was 7.7%. So you looked at it 7.7% up or 7.7% down. And I can see some people betting that by going short the stock at the level it was. So you're going to have some people coming in and covering the shorts. You're going to have some people that were on the sideline. Oh, my God, I better jump in because now I'm going to miss it. I said I was going to buy it at 800. Now it's over 1,000.
I agree with you.
Like if you're
That's like career risk-driven
True.
panic buying.
If you're a large cap growth
Nothing
manager,
I
you
can
don't
do.
know what are you doing?
What are you telling your investors?
Again, I think panic buying is a big reason why a stock popped 10%.
So last thing before we start the show, actually. So gold.
We haven't started the show yet?
This is from Goldman. So 12 million shares traded last night in after hours, and another 700,000 shares this morning. That is serious.
It's
buying.
$1,000 stock.
12 million shares.
The options market alone in NVIDIA is bigger than most industries.
Yes.
Like the daily dollar flow, the daily dollar flow coming and going in NVIDIA on both sides is just gigantic.
All right, we just sit here and wait.
Full disclosure, we sold 10% last night.
Good for you.
I think at 10.85, just
Good for you.
after hours, just with a pop. We just felt we had to do something.
Good for you. You ready to go?
3 claps coming in.
Oh boy, more than 3.
Bespin Gaza exhausted.
Today's show is brought to you by Global X. Since 2008, Global X ETFs has
shit.
been committed to empowering investors with
Oh, what I wanted to
unexplored
do?
intelligent solutions.
Global X specializes in ETFs that track emerging trends like the rise of artificial intelligence, as well as strategies to generate high income potential.
Visit globalxetfs.com to explore
going
a lineup of more than
void
90
race.
ETFs, along with insights to help you navigate a dynamic investing landscape.
GlobalXETFs.com.
I don't think we're scared of
What is
wood
it?
rays
143?
at all.
I thought we did that last week.
Oh man. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the finest investing podcast known to mankind. You are rocking with the Compound and Friends. I'm your host, Downtown Josh Brown, here with my co-host, Michael Batnick. As always, Michael, say hello to the folks.
Hello.
All right. Duncan is here. John is here. Nicole is here. Who else? Sean is here. Rob is here. We have a very special guest today. We have 2 special guests. Our special guest and our special guest's special guest. And we're so excited to have you in the studio. Ladies and gentlemen, Joe Moglia is someone that I have looked up to for a very long time. He is, I think, one of the most storied leaders anywhere on Wall Street, but specifically in brokerage, in asset management, wealth management. Joe is the former CEO and chairman of the board at TD Ameritrade, as well as the former head football coach and current chairman of athletics at Coastal Carolina University. Joe grew TD Ameritrade's market cap from $700 million to $10 billion. Not quite NVIDIA, but pretty good, right? Why did you do AI?
We would have gotten there.
All right. Joe spent 17 years at Merrill Lynch and led Coastal Carolina to 4 conference championships. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome Joe Moglia to the show. All right. I want to start with your story. Your story's amazing. We don't have to do like the whole biography, but I want to give people who haven't heard of you enough so that they understand how you've done what you've done with your career and where you're coming from. I think it starts with football first, then Merrill Lynch, then Ameritrade, and then back to football. But give us like the Cliff's Notes version.
Mineral Field
I grew up in the diamond machine section in New York City, gang area, immigrant parents. Who are my best friends? The Tiny Tots.
Okay.
Okay, 2 of my very best friends I was with every day in grammar school. Why, do you know them? You know them? You familiar with
They rejected me.
The 2 of my very best friends in grammar school got killed in high school. One died of a drug overdose, one was killed by the police.
All right, we're about to A-move.
If I
Guys
had not
ready?
played high school football, I would have been with him. My goal was to play football, baseball in college, and my girlfriend got pregnant. So I left sport and professional school in university in the Bronx. I made the economics. I wanted to go to work. Freshman year, I got my wife and daughter, and every time in education, I drove a yellow cab in New York City.
like move her stab
you
out.
were doing that at 18 years old?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
But it was also the first year I didn't have sport. Now, Fordham Prep almost got high school in class, St. Catherine's University. That's where I went. They gave me a coaching job. So they got me to the senior year. Coached high school ball during the season. Worked for my father.
I think I lost one carrier.
But by the time I finished my
Kind of
third year
unfortunate.
coaching, I really loved coaching and decided if I could get a head high school football job, I'd pursue a career in coaching. If not, I was going to try to go to Wall Street. One school gave me a head high school job offer. At 22, I became the youngest head coach in the history state of Delaware. Still am at a place called Archer Academy. By the way, a segue, that happens to be where Joe Biden and all of his kids went. Right? So that's how I began my career as a football coach.
How did you learn how to coach? Like, you were a kid.
Well, how do you learn to do everything? You do it. You do it. Plus, I mean, I love playing, and I took this very, very seriously. I was either going to continue to drive a cab or work for the post office.
How do
work
you
for the
learn how
fire
to
service.
do anything?
So my alternative
do
was
it.
those three things as opposed
Wise
to learn how to
words.
coach. I was able to learn how to coach. But you take it like everything else. You guys are far more experienced today than you would have been 20 years ago, right? Well, certainly that was the case for me as well. I began as an assistant JV high school football coach. My career was pretty solid as a football coach.
Coaching people a couple of years younger than you.
SMAP is
That's
pretty
right.
tough for
That's right.
PBZ.
That's
So
right.
you had to learn how to be a leader really really quickly. You didn't have 10 years to stumble around until you learned leadership.
Plus, I was a father. Plus, I was a husband. Plus, I had to pay for my education. So I had to get this right.
Yeah.
I had to get it right.
Okay.
And I had gone through, and because I had come from that high school, a lot of the kids I was coaching, they were younger when I was actually playing there. So they kind of knew who I was. So I had a degree of respect from the very, very beginning. But to me, kind of knowing what I went through, to what extent might I be able to help them not make some of the same mistakes and look at life a little bit differently. We all think we've got it tough. You don't know what tough is until you really, really have something tough. And that's all relative anyway. So the bottom line is my goal is to be a head coach at a major school. If you want me to continue the story, you want me to stop there? Just say I went to Wall Street.
Well, so yeah. I mean, I think like the transition to Wall Street's really interesting because you're walking into Wall Street the way I walked into Wall Street. Like, all right, what do we do here? Like, everyone's making money. There's a lot of action, but like, what do we do? And you figured that out really quickly, and I think excelled. Also, again, at a very young age, you didn't waste a lot of time. So
I didn't even see his drone, man.
Hey, so fast forward 13 years, and I'm the defensive coordinator at Dartmouth. Now we have 4 children, and it's my first season at Dartmouth. And the sheriff from Hanover, New Hampshire, comes in and needs to see me, and my heart starts to beat. I think there's a death of the family, and he says, "Coach, I'm really sorry." He hands me divorce papers. So now I can't afford to live independently and support my wife and 4 children. So I get permission to move into a storage room above the football offices. Now, Dartmouth is in Hanover, New Hampshire. The problem with that storage room, we had no heat, so I could see my breath in the winter. Well, I want to live in the heat.
Do that too, bro.
Miami upsets Nebraska for the national championship.
Yeah.
They offer me a job to go there and ultimately become their defensive coordinator. Now, I'm going to go from defensive coordinator in the Ivy League, defensive coordinator to the national championship team. And every one of those guys got major jobs all over the place, NFL and college. I cannot have a better job. But guys, a football coach's life is 7 days a week, 80 hours a week, no days off for 5 months. Then you go on the road recruiting. Back then, we didn't make much money. I'm going to live with Carl Gable. My kids are still going to live in New Hampshire with their mom. I can't afford to fly 4 kids back and forth. Toughest career decision I've ever made in my life. To this day, in my life, that was turning down that job. Because I didn't think I could do my job as a coach if I couldn't live up to my responsibility as a father. So, what else did I have interest in? I always had an interest in Wall Street, especially the institutional side of Wall Street. So, I hustled, and eventually, Merrill Lynch gave me an opportunity where they put me in their MBA training program. There were 26 of us. 25 MBAs from Harvard, Stanford, etc.
What year is
One
this?
football coach. 1984 training program. 83 was my last season.
One football coach.
I was one football coach, and everybody says a football game was shorting. I didn't know what short meant, so I thought that was a compliment.
Yeah.
I thought that was a compliment at the time. But that's not the case, and a few years later, most of those MBAs were working for
The
them.
training program was for what? To be what?
MBAs, the institutional side, so in investment banking, in equity, debt, municipals.
So these other guys were snickering because they came from Ivy League schools and they were like born and raised to be on Wall Street. And here comes the football coach who not long ago was sleeping in a storage unit. And then you outwork them all and you end up running.
You know what, though, famous Josh, they all work hard. The issue was, though, I already had a life under my belt. I had gotten a divorce, I had 4 kids, I supported myself. I grew up in a gang. uneducated parents working in a food store, and plus as a football coach, you got to make serious decisions every 30 seconds or so during the span of a game. Your entire career is dependent upon those decisions that you make, and whether or not you win on Saturday is going to depend on where your family's going to be able to live the next year or so. You got a lot going on. A lot of the guys, a lot of the NBAs, ladies and guys, that struggled was because they had difficulty handling the stress in the social side of Wall Street. If you don't produce, you're going to be out. You make a lot of money, but you're going to get fired.
That was your whole life up until then.
And I could handle that piece. I could handle that piece.
So that was the transferable skills from coach to successful.
Absolutely. I was a much better. I began as a bond salesman. I was a much better bond salesman because of my skills as a football coach than I would have been without that.
That's so. All right. So then you excel there. And then how do you make the jump to executive management from sales?
I think in the late 80s, we had Merrill Lynch had our own problem with mortgages back then. We had a $377 million problem. You had Salomon Brothers blowing up. You had Black Friday when the equity markets were blowing up. So what happened was there was a time, I remember actually my very first check as a bond salesman, and the guy that hired me was complimenting me on breaking a record, and he gave me my check, and I said two things. Number one, this is going to be the smallest check you ever give me. But number two, you'll find when we have issues or problems, I will be a much better leader than I am a bond salesman. And I was a pretty good bond salesman. So as the firm started to struggle, late 80s going into the 90s, I started moving to middle management. I went from being a bond salesman to assistant in New York, running national. That was 6 months. Then I got the executive job where I ran all global institutional sales.
Okay, so that must have been pretty. Just from that point forward, and you've accomplished so much more since then. You must have at that point though given yourself some credit for everything that you had accomplished up until then. It's a pretty big 180 career-wise. And you must have been pretty impressed with yourself, or not really?
I was impressed with myself is a bad term, I think, but I was incredibly proud of what I was able to do, and I knew I worked for it, and I knew I deserved it.
Okay. So now what? You get offered a role to do something completely different outside of Merrill Lynch, or are you looking for that at that point?
No. Eventually, what happens is they moved me from sales. They wanted me to run a business, so they asked me to run the municipal division for us. I did that, and then I was the first executive on the institutional committee to be moved to the private client committee. The second actually was Stan O'Neill, who ultimately became our CEO. So I went to the private client side. So my last job at Merrill Lynch, I ran 100% of all investment products, the 401k business, the insurance company, and the middle market. Okay. But now, that's through the 90s. But we know what the dot-com boom was like. March 2000, the dot-com bubble burst. And the dot-com names and all the technology companies that were part of that really started to struggle. Places like Ameritrade were going out of business. And eventually, they wound up doing a national search. And they wound up offering me the job to move my family at the time. I had remarried from New York City to Omaha, Nebraska, where we're headquartered. And a time in my life where I was probably one of our top 10 or 15 executives out of 47,000 people in the world, I took the shot. I wanted to go from a firm that was known as a global powerhouse to a firm that everybody anticipated was going out of business.
Because Ameritrade, at this time, is looked at like a .com, like E-Trade, and I guess DLJ Direct was part of DLJ, so maybe that's not a good example. But you had a handful of .com brokerages. They looked every bit as shaky as every other type of .com, whether it was e-commerce or anything else.
Probably worse because the customers left.
It's probably worse. And there's no stock trading. People were just unengaged with the market after the blow up.
Well, one of the mistakes that Ameritrade made was really wanted to business. You got paid by your trades. And it was longer payment for order flow. So you wanted to get as many trades as you could get done. So we started to cater, before I got there, we started to cater to the day traders. So day traders, which is not a bad doctor to come up in today's world, but during the 90s, you were a day trader, even if you went home for 4 years, the market did nothing to go up. So day traders did very, 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 very well through that time period. When did day traders not do well? When the market's going the other way. So March 2000, the bubble burst. March 2003, that recession wasn't going to an end. There were around 900,000 day traders in the United States in around 1999. By the end of 2003, there were about 20,000. They went broke. They went out of business. And one of the things I realized when I got to Ameritrade was very,
What year was that?
2001, middle of 2001, in fact, a couple months prior to 9/11. I was in the middle of that March 2003 recession. And so one of the things I realized is that we really weren't we really weren't a financial service company. We were a technology company in a financial service wrapper. Just realizing that. I don't know anything about technology. I don't know that much about online brokerage, but I do know something about business. I do know something about what matters, et cetera, et cetera. I know who you need to have in the right spots to be able to get the job done. So we transitioned out of that, and we focused, and we found out our core competencies were transaction processing. So we are in financial services. So what transaction processing does what? Buy and sell stocks. So we were in 7 countries. We got out of all of them. We had multiple products. We got out of all that. We got out of the day trading business, and we took half our savings and we offset it against our losses. We lost money 25 years in a row. And we took the other half and we poured it, reinvested back into being able to buy and sell stocks.
Oh my god, I'm A-moving my own carrier.
When stocks like Ameritrade live by Protoss, daily average revenue trade. This was a like a month.
Yes.
So your stock would go up and down.
Yes.
Based on how many trades were placed, and you saw that was a dead end.
Well, after 3 years in a row of the stock going down, all we were doing was losing money. So the stock was 2 months after got that, stock was trading at 3.
Yeah.
Again, the market cap was probably lower than $700 million. And so my pitch, they brought me in because we were going out of business. So they were looking for my thought process with regard to this. And all along, I said, here's what we're doing, here's why we're doing it. Then my presentation was something that they welcomed. There was death to stay the way they were staying. And we were drastically changing things. And the board welcomed it.
Why do you agree to dive into that dumpster fire?
I think there were 2 reasons. The first, Joe Ricketts was the founder, and one of the 2 things that he did well, I thought he invested a lot of money in technology. And the other thing he did well, he invested a lot of money into the marketing. But back in the 90s, people heard of America. You know, they were on commercials, people knew who they were. We kind of had a reputation. They were the 2 reasons initially why I looked at it. But the other reason why, I was halfway through this recession. There should have been tremendous consolidation. Tremendous. There were 200 firms when I got to that had online brokerage presence. By the end of 2003, we were about 20 that had online brokerage presence.
So you thought you would win?
I thought if we could, I knew we could fix our stuff. I knew we could figure that out. That's kind of what I've always done. But then if we figured our stuff out, it was still an incredible opportunity to consolidate the industry. Nobody had done that. Schwab, I think, should have done that. But they were trying to be Merrill Lynch. So we began the consolidation of the industry. So once we got our act together, we started to consolidate the entire industry. To the point 2-3 years later, we were #1 in the world of what we did. And by the time we got to 2008, that included the financial crisis. Yeah, our shareholders had a 500% return, including the financial crisis. We outperformed every financial firm in the globe right now.
So Joe, I have a chapter in my first book talking about the marketing that the online brokers were doing in the late 90s. And I don't disparage that because that was the moment, that was the zeitgeist. But Jackie Chan throwing a laptop up in the air, beating up 2 assailants, and then kicking the trade into his laptop. Phil Jackson sitting in the back of the limo. My next big trade is, and it's an internet stock. Anna Kournikova giving stock tips on the tennis court. Shaquille O'Neal. Again, that was the moment. Everyone was doing it. But what I found funny was, right around 2001, maybe you had something to do with this, the messaging and the marketing could not have been more starkly different. You had the guy from Law & Order, Sam Waters.
Yeah, he was out.
Okay. So the guy from Law & Order, investing is serious business. Oh, we're not kicking trades in on the laptop anymore? No more come through? So look, that was also the zeitgeist in 2001. I remember the Super Bowl commercial with the trade, the chimpanzee on the monkey on the horse, and it's like going through Death Valley, all the .com companies were broken down. So kind of had to pivot, not just the business model, but the mentality that you're trying to engender with the existing clients who didn't blow up. It's like, okay, you guys are still here, still investing, still trading. Now we're taking this stuff seriously. That seems like it was an important moment for the industry where it went from online casino to, oh, actually, we can help you help yourself.
It was a critical moment for us. In fact, our mission back then was to, everybody's got a mission here. We want to be the firm of choice, blah, 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 blah. Everybody says the same thing. Our mission was we want to bring financial literacy to every family in this country. That was what our mission was. And that's also, look at what we did. We did buying and selling stocks. We did all these other things. So remember, we didn't have an own something about running a business. I didn't care where you were advertising. But our marketing constantly getting for marketing. What our profitability is.
Yeah.
Right. So with regard to that, it was the shift was after about 3 months was okay. We're going to focus on transaction processing. We're tripling our investment in that, and we're eliminating everything else.
Okay.
And our clients are going to be 3 priorities. Our clients, our shareholders, you got to make some money, otherwise you're not going to stay in business. And I recognize that, for me, it's also about your people, and we're going to deliver value to each of those constituents through our employees.
GG.
That was it. Nothing else mattered.
Okay. So let's fast forward a little bit. My first professional involvement with TD was on the RIA custody side. And I have to tell you, I love my current custodians, but TD was incredible to us. I joined a firm where that was the custodian. I started a new firm with Barry, and we asked TD to be we had nothing. And they said, yes, we'll work with you and we'll support you. And they went above and beyond. And I think even to this day, if you ask RIAs who have been around for a while, you bring up TD, they will tell you how much they love the people, how much they loved working with TD. So I don't know how much of that comes from you. I'm sure a lot of it. And people probably still tell you that to this day. Whose idea was it for TD to go whole hog into RIA custody? Because it strikes me as that created a ton of value for you guys.
What year was that for you?
11.
I would say 10, 11.
Okay. So when I got there, we had minimal assets in the RIA space.
Yeah.
And we didn't think they were important because they weren't doing day trading. Right. So I thought, again, I came from Merrill Lynch. Gathering assets was a big deal to me. Plus, I thought, allow the customers, don't dictate to the customers whether they should be online or have an FC. Allow them to make a choice. So we know we got people that are willing to do online business with us, but we knew they had money elsewhere. So suppose they had the opportunity to get more of their assets to us, and we needed to be able to provide them with another solution. That was the financial advisors. So, and again, having come from Merrill Lynch, I had tremendous respect for them. In fact, I've shared this with you guys in the past. I am a partner and a chairman in a wealth management company called Capital Wealth Advisors in Naples, Florida. They told me for several years now. They told me right from the beginning was they loved their experience with TD Ameritrade.
Well, they never
TD
competed with us. That was the other thing.
No, we didn't need TD Ameritrade. No, we didn't need to because we didn't look at it that way. Remember, the way it's been set up is like if you're running they have the same people running. Sorry, they have different people running the separate channels. So if I'm running this channel, I don't want to take anything away from me. I said, focus on the client. Right. Let the client tell us what they want to do.
So we were the clients.
Yes,
and you guys weren't calling our clients to compete with us.
No, we were allowing your clients to do what they want. And if one of your clients want to do some online trading, well, let them do that. Why don't you open up an account with TD Ameritrade? And that's what we did. Now, I was struggling to make sure that we maintain that. Meaning, I wanted to focus on the RIA business. Part of the reason why we did the deal when Ameritrade bought TD Waterhouse from TD Group, and part of that deal was we took on the TD name. We were never their holding on subsidiary, but they did become our largest shareholder, 39% of it. They were in. It was Fidelity, it was Schwab and Fidelity, and TD Waterhouse. There were the 3 big players back then in the RIA space. By definition, by doing that deal, we immediately became a player in the RIA space and became number 3. That was number 3 in the space. That's part of the reason why I wanted to do the deal. A lot of other reasons as well. So for me, it made us whole. It made us whole. And showed up at $24 billion. When we did the deal with Schwab, we had $1.7 billion in assets.
Yeah. Well, I was going to say, the other thing is you guys were scrappy. You would work with firms that were in an earlier stage in their development. You would cater to firms that needed something really specific and special that maybe the other custodians didn't want to waste their time with.
What you guys did for us would never happen now. Ever. It's the exact opposite.
I tell this story. We had however many clients. We had 50 clients, or maybe 100 clients. But it was so overwhelming to start a firm. We had to do physical FedExes with account forms to clients. Not account forms, LTOAs. Yeah. They had to reassign themselves to our new firm. Your people did our envelopes and return envelopes, like addressing to clients for us, which I don't know why they did it to this day, but like it's just it's emblematic of the attitude of the TD people. They were just like TD Ameritrade people. Let's support our customers the best way we can, and They really did, and I would shout out Neil Curran.
Chris
I would shout
Engelbert.
out Chris Engelbert.
Yep.
You know, some people
Yep.
that
Tom Bradley was running the operation back then.
Tom was terrific. So anyway, we loved the experience working with you guys, and I didn't meet you till way later. But it was just it was a great partnership.
It's a partnership.
And people remember that.
The custodial business is something a little bit different these days.
So one of the reasons why, guys, that happened back then is because initially the way Ameritrade wanted to approach this, and the way Waterhouse wanted to approach this, they wanted to do it on price. And first of all, it's not like you guys get charged that much money to begin with.
Yeah.
So we said, okay, how are we going to differentiate ourselves from what Waterhouse was doing, or what Fidelity is doing, or what Schwab is doing? We got to do it on service. We got to be able to do it on service. So let's do everything that our RIAs need to be able to help them do their job better. So as a bond salesman growing up, covering large portfolio managers in the fixed income world, it was like, could I learn their job well enough that I could almost do their job, so they get bigger bonuses at the end. So if I could do their job almost for them, they're going to give me more than my share of business.
You also had
That's the way we approach it.
You also had leading edge tech. You had Bayo, advisors, officials, see their client accounts, and iRebound, which lives still to this day. Schwab integrated TD. Everybody wanted them to keep iRebound,
Right.
and they did.
Well, another
So-
smart thing that you guys did was you saw our growth trajectory, that we were growing like weeds, and you gave us a dedicated service team before we were ready for it asset-wise, because you knew that we were going to get there in a hurry.
Yeah.
Yes, no, that you guys deserve the credit for that. But having said that, the RIA channel was growing like crazy. It still is, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
Right. The RIA, how many people want to stay and get 85% of the cost of the tech taken out, even though they're getting 45, 50% by being at Morgan Stanley or being at Payne Webber, wherever they might be. So it really was a matter of, it was a fast-growing channel. It wasn't the most profitable, but to me, it was the right answer for our direct clients, because they all have money where they need help somebody else.
So fast forward to the deal. So 2018, 2019, you guys have probably been approached a number of times to be acquired or be merged with somebody or something. For whatever reason, you decide, okay, this is the time. And it so happens to coincide with the onset of commission-free trading becoming industry standard. What was it like to do that deal? How do you feel in the aftermath of that? And what do you think people that are in the investment community should hear from you about that whole situation?
In 2005, we announced the Waterhouse deal. We closed it in 2006. We integrated in 2006. I reached out to Charles Schwab. We talked about it. Would not perfect marriage with us. Look at what we've done. Look at where we came. You guys didn't pay attention to it. So now we've got to do a little bit of a
So this is your idea.
Yeah, 2006. Yes, 2006. And now we may have done that through investment bankers, but yes. And we actually had a private meeting at some hotel in Chicago that lasted a couple hours. We didn't go too far from that, but I said, what a perfect marriage this is going to be. Now, staff. In 2017, I got a call. Still champ, okay? And I still coach, by the way. And I got a call from Walt Bettinger talking about the same thing that happened in 2006, because he was part of that. And he said,
Bettinger, the CEO.
the CEO. And he said, you guys have been outstanding on the trading side. We've been outstanding on the asset side. Amen. Couldn't agree more with that. And we always thought, going back to 2006, that this would be a perfect marriage in heaven. I said, I could not agree more. Could not agree more. Now, it took us a little while to be able to get that done. And in the middle of that, it was Chuck that came out to cut commissions to zero. But that wasn't because of, I mean, we were only charging $5.95. That wasn't because of
Commissions,
that was because
commissions were not an impediment to
they were
energy
not.
trading.
They had zero. Robinhood and IBKR had zero impact on any of it. Wasn't an issue. But
Well, wait a minute. In fairness, Robinhood never came along.
it would have got it.
Oh, you think?
I'm going to explain why.
He doesn't know.
Okay.
He wasn't around for
Don't-
Zecco.
don't-
You were not around for Zecco. There was an attempt at $0.
Oh yeah, there had
commission.
been. There had been. I think Bank of America actually tried it one
Yep,
time. Yeah.
yep.
So there were people out there trying to do that, but it never amounted to anything. Plus, remember, we thought we gave pretty good value. We thought for this. We had all sorts of risk management tools and great systems and great support. And for $5.95, how much? How small a trade do you have to do?
Nobody cares about commissions. In terms of paying for them.
Agreed. Unless you were so small, it really mattered. So you look at the average balances back then. You have to go too far back to at Protoss. We weren't competing with each other. That was what happened. Here's the inside story on this. Here's what I've been told from outstanding sources. That back around 2009, during the 1990s, Chuck had predicted that eventually there would be zero commissions. Right? Yes. Okay. His book was about to go public. It's in his book, right? It was about to go public. He almost unilaterally went to his board and said, let's go with zero commission. We were in the middle of negotiating a deal. And part of that would have been the fulfillment of his prediction 20 years before that. Now, all that happened, well, we immediately, within 48 hours, we did the same thing. So did E-Trade, so did Dell, so did everybody else.
Well, hang on. The news breaks. Schwab stock falls 5%, yours falls 18%.
It was a brilliant move on their part, business-wise.
And they're in the midst of negotiating with you guys.
That's fair.
But you're saying
That's fair.
you're saying he did this because he wanted to be able to say in his book, look, I did it.
I'm saying that's at least 50%. I'm backing up a little bit. That's at least 50%.
Okay.
That's at least 50%.
No, but he said no. We'll fall. They're going to fall a lot more, and then we'll swallow them.
Well, everybody did understand because we had a greater percentage of our.
Well, because they're a bank.
But we had TD as our bank, right? Which was, I thought, a great deal. They had a much bigger percentage of bottom line. They had a much bigger bottom line. We had a much bigger percentage of bottom line from trade.
You needed the trade.
We needed more trade. So let's say 65% of our overall revenue is from trade. 65% of theirs came from assets. Right? So that was what hopefully we wanted. But it wasn't that. Yeah, your idea was 100%.
Natural marriage with a 4-year engagement. I mean, it took a long
That's
time.
what happens. Some engagement. They take a while. You got the 40 phase.
Yeah.
But when
The day you struck the deal, though, you're happy because it is a great match ultimately, but also it's the culmination of something that came into your head 12 years prior.
But wait a minute. Answer this. Because I forget, how much time had elapsed between commissions going to zero and the announcement of the deal? It wasn't that long, was it? Oh, it was. Okay.
No, it was a year. We could double check that historically, but it was about a year.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
It was about a year.
Okay.
And first of all, it stopped conversation for a while because even if they were going to do this,
Upgrade
you're in the middle of
complete.
negotiation. Don't you think you'd get a heads up? Don't you think I would have got a heads up on this?
Yeah.
There was no heads up. There was no heads up.
I can imagine
All
your
of a sudden
face.
it was announced.
I can imagine your face when you saw this announcement.
Yeah, that was a little bit of surprise. Now, what happened?
They did what?
Yeah, but what happened again? That's very good. 50%.
Okay.
But the other piece of that was, what happened was everybody matched, so everybody had the exact same market share 3 months later. Just we took the pool and we shrunk it by about 50, 60%. So we just wound up making less money. Now, we all made that up. But
Whose idea was it to bring Tom Bradley back? So Tom Bradley had been a long-standing face of Ameritrade custody for advisors, and they brought him back to help integrate the two businesses because from the TD Ameritrade side, he was someone that those advisors trusted that the integration would go smoothly. Was that your idea?
no, what happened was TV, Tom was the LA business. So he was one of the senior executives, so he inherited it. I thought the world was dead. Okay, now my successor was Ted Tomzak, and then his successor, then he had a successor. So there was a little bit of friction there, and Tom decided he was going to step down and retire. But he was still incredibly well known in the industry. I thought that was a loss for us.
Yeah.
Later on,
Gotta get
Schwab
drone
fired him
kills.
and brought him in, and he'd be. And he's
Don't get
always
drone
done a great
kills.
job
It's
there.
just
there's
over.
hundreds. I mean, is there 100,000 plus people coming together? These are massive
And
companies.
he's just like all in
Yeah, but
every
remember
game.
online,
I should just
okay,
be
so
adding
we had
gateways
we had
earlier and
12,000
just
people. I think they had like 20.
assume I'm
22,000.
getting
We
all
covered
in. I thought I was
30,000
adding up
people.
early enough, but he
No,
did a
what is
very
it?
early
What is
night
it?
of that
And more
game,
of a
so.
full-service place or a different type
What
of place,
can you do?
you'd have 2 to 3, 4, 5 times. When you look at our numbers, you'd think we'd have hundreds of thousands of employees. But we were online.
So meanwhile,
Just gonna do a
it took
blink
2
all in
years,
this game.
and
Two
the
base,
integration
blink
is
all
behind
in.
us. And it was, all things considered, they did a pretty great job, both sides. And under your stewardship, shareholders
And I'm
did
gonna go.
incredibly
It's
well.
gonna be a
I-
Nexus
sure,
first
very
blink
well,
all
yeah.
in. So it's gonna be fire.
Bernie Clark, who was in Tom Bradley's role, but on the Schwab side, stepped down or announced his retirement a couple weeks ago. You want to say a few things about Bernie's legacy or Bernie's capabilities in this industry?
No,
Because
I would love to.
Yeah.
I think you go back. Bernie's been in that position a long, long time, and you look at
20 years ish.
long, long time. That goes back to around the time that.
Thanks for the
Bill Gates
follow,
right joined America.
J69CN.
And one of the things that Chuck really was right on from early on was we got to gather assets.
Yeah.
Whereas early on, the military was about doing trade. So was Waterhouse, so was Scott Trade, so was E-Trade, etc. But Chuck was about we got to gather assets. And in the RIA space, the ability to be able to do that was led by Bernie. So I look at him as a pioneer in the industry. I look at him as somebody who had an incredible impact in terms of the overall growth of Schwab. And you know, we're not close friends, but I have the utmost respect to him, respect for him as a professional.
There's a lot of change in the industry right now. A lot of people moving around, and I don't know if there's any sort of specificity as to why right at this moment. But we have a new incoming CEO at Vanguard. We have what else do we want to say on that?
I mean, just the state of the... Yeah. So we'll get to Vanguard in a second, but just the state, what's your opinion on where is the custodian business today? Because things look a lot different today than they did even 5 years ago.
But I still think it's one of the fastest growing channels in our industry, period, across the board. And I still think there's going to be, kind of the runaway growth, right? The person that's no longer happy being at one of the major wirehouses, being someplace else. And they recognize over time the value, frankly, going into an RAA, like you guys are, and having somebody else handle a lot of these problems that they would have had to handle themselves, or they would have had a major Morgan Stanley take care of for them, but they're going to make much less money. So there is less hassle, and there's potential to make more money by still moving into the RAA space. So I still think it's a significant growth business as far as the wealth management.
It's not as good of a business though for the custodians at this moment, because it's great that commission-free trading is now the standard, but they still have to make money. The custodians still need a reason for why they're doing all this work on behalf of our clients, and I don't think that they necessarily are thrilled with the status quo.
Well, money markets are killing them, obviously, or killing the strength.
People are being more deliberate about not leaving cash balances and 0% yielding. So I think it's still a tough time on the custody side.
Let me ask you this. So in 10 years from now, do you think it's likely that, I'll call it a duopoly, that exists between Schwab and Fidelity? I don't know what market share they have. I'm making it up 90%. It's huge. Yeah. Do you think that there's room? So Bank of, Pershing is way far behind, and Altruist is getting started. Is it going to look like this in 10 years, or is there room for a potential disruptor to actually come in and create change?
Goldman Sachs is in the business now.
If somebody else is going to be doing it, it's probably somebody that you're not necessarily thinking about now. And I would predict if somebody does it, it's going to be because they figure out a way to take advantage of AI to have a major impact on what their overall cost structure is. So even though they may charge the RAAs a similar amount of money, they're going to have more of that's going to drop to the bottom line, because they're going to be more productive and more efficient.
So I'm making this up, but like a JP Morgan, for example, they're not in the business right now. With something, and I'm not that specifically, but somebody like that,
Well, it's Goldman. Goldman is in the business. John Waldron this is not like they're not dipping a toe in the water.
Well, fine, but they're in the business. Doesn't mean they're going to be successful. They've not been successful in a lot of businesses.
I agree, but there are serious competitors. A lot of that.
I think there's not enough technical advisors for a legitimate third option.
So the only argument against that might be, I'm not disagreeing with you, but my argument against it would be, you can't Fidelity's got, how many trillions of assets do they have? Right, Schwab's got 8.5, 8.77. That's $18, $19 billion. 25 basis points, $18 billion of an asset in a fund. Right, it's a lot of money. Okay, plus if they're smart and they're not in place, and they take the advantage of it, because right now with money market funds where they are, and where the front end of the curve where it is, that's going to change over time too. So profitability is going to change there as well. But can you not figure out a way, by really being thoughtful, really being creative, either figure out a way to get 50 basis points out of your expenses?
I needed a battery. I was very close to holding
Okay,
it.
that will have a major impact on your bottom line, or figure out a way to be able to charge 25, 35,
Battery and,
45
like,
basis points. Be creative, be thoughtful, take
I don't
advantage
know,
of AI.
one more
Looks like it's
cannon.
going to be some combination of finding those efficiencies via AI. to
Even
your
just a
point,
century would have helped a lot.
using that channel of RIA custody to push more asset management, which, you know, obviously Fidelity has a much bigger business there than Schwab.
It's still a monster growth engine. You're right, though.
Look, household fees are a thing. They swear they're not
Maintenance
going to do
fees,
it.
all those
but
things, yes.
all that
Yeah.
stuff. Okay.
Meanwhile, Eric Balchunas tweeted, equity mutual funds are working on their 82nd straight month of outflows. Did you ever think that this would be the case, the state of mutual funds?
Not over the span of my earlier lifetime, but I know I was running products at Merrill Lynch. When
And these
we got
games are
very much
such a
involved
waste
with
of fucking
ETFs in the
time.
very beginning.
Like,
So
literally,
when people start to recognize what the cost of the actual mutual funds are, right?
Such
and
a
some
waste
of
of
the
time.
restrictions and some of the tax issues, et cetera, and you recognize
like, you
the
don't learn
simplicity,
anything in these
especially as the
games. It's
ETF
just
fees
all
have come
inning.
down,
Every game,
and they put
Nidus.
in the ETF fees, and everybody understands kind of what
Three
an
roach
ETF,
all
not
in.
everybody knows what
Nidus.
ETF actually stands for, but they recognize that ETFs kind of better than mutual funds.
It's a huge
I see
waste
a
of
major
time.
transition from the mutual fund industry. Usually when you say coming out
Like,
of equity funds, you think
never
they're going
plays
to
like
stay
a
public
like a
cash.
normal
They're
dismacker
going
game.
ETFs, right? So ETFs
It's just
kind
kind of cringe, man.
and that shouldn't surprise anybody, because over time, mutual funds, I think, will very much give way to ETFs. And remember, we already have actively managed ETFs. So the
Keep
idea
meaning to
of
build my
mutual fund
pylon
is actively
in my
managed
wall, and I
is
just keep
one that's
forgetting.
indexed versus an ETF that's actively managed. ETFs are going to take over that business over time.
In the last 2 weeks, there's been a wave of actively managed fund families filing with the SEC for ETF share classes of existing funds.
Well, Vanguard's patent expired recently.
So the wave is...
So that's huge.
Yeah.
That's huge.
So this is the wave. I wanted to
Well,
ask...
it's happening like crazy in the crypto world, right? Isn't the SEC supposed to make a decision today on Ethereum?
Today, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
We just had the Bitcoin thing of a few months ago.
So I wanted to ask you, did anyone at any point at TD Ameritrade say we should be creating ETFs or some sort of asset management product, or was that like sort of verboten because you guys wanted to play the role of a provider and not an investor? Like, what was the thought process?
Right. We kept looking at that. We kept talking about that. So one of the things we've done about, we had a product called the Meravest, which was a way to be able. It was like a black box where you could put all your qualifications in as an individual investor, and then here would be your asset allocation model pop up on the side, and would automatically every quarter, well, for Walker, would rebalance itself, and we would charge like 85 basis points or something. The reality is it's on the retail side. Yeah, it was on the retail side, right? So the reality is, as far as that goes, you've got to make a real commitment to it. And we were also faced with the Fidelities and the T. Rowe Prices and all the other incredible mutual funds that, not mutual funds, the asset management companies that are out there that were way ahead of us. So how can we be better off really gaining market share and making money, fighting against these powerhouses, or being better and better in terms of what we do?
I also think a better business for you guys was the commission-free trade ETF platform. You had ETF companies, asset managers lined up to pay you to be on the platform so that advisors like us would have access to commission-free trades of those products.
100%. So that's how we did it.
Great business.
Yeah.
And the advisors loved it. The advisors' clients loved it. I pine for the days of $5 because they really didn't bother me at all. I shouldn't say a silver lining of commission free, even if it's a lot of confusion about how custodians make money, the direct and custom index explosion that's taken place since 2019 is pretty astonishing.
Also, that's true. Also, just SMA people who had SMAs, because we were trading using asset-based pricing. I think we were paying 22 basis points so that we don't have a trade ticket every time. And that's gone. That opened up the aperture to do a lot more things.
Yeah, I can see that. I can definitely see that.
So let's talk about Vanguard and Actors for a second. So Vanguard's new CEO came from iShares. It's the first time in the history of the company that there's an outsider running it. I think Buckley was at Vanguard for 30 years, and there's a reason.
Vogel.
No, Buckley too.
Yeah.
Buckley started on the
yes,
Vogel, and
yes,
he had been there
yes,
for 3
right,
decades. So we made a chart of iShares and Vanguard. This is just the assets in ETF. But the spread here, so what we're looking at is iShares in the light blue, Vanguard in the gray, and Vanguard in the dark blue, and the gray is the spread, iShares less Vanguard. And iShares is taking over, and I think part of the reason why their lead has expanded to a $1.2 trillion in ETFs is because Buckley was not super kind to the advisor community.
Oh, let me say that. Permit me to say that very differently.
Okay.
I met Buckley once. This is not personal. I met him at a TD. I met him at somebody's Christmas party. I don't know why. He said, coming in the door as the CEO, you see what we just did to the asset management business? Now we're gonna do
You're
that.
next.
Now we're gonna do that to the advice business. You were next. That was his comment to the investment advisor industry.
And they said,
and then,
okay,
holy shit, $1 trillion went to iShares in the next few weeks. Who could have imagined? The new guy is probably not going to be talking that way about advisors who love Vanguard. Probably, right?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I wouldn't think so.
Let me set this up. Vanguard is not known. This is Barron. Not known for surprising investors. It's about steady Eddie index funds and reliably low fees. But Vanguard has shocked its huge following twice this year. First in February with the sudden retirement of CEO Tim Buckley, and again last week when it announced his replacement Salim Ramsey. A former BlackRock executive, Ramsey is the first outsider to run the $8.7 trillion in assets firm in its 50-year history. He starts in July. He told Barron's he's not planning to make any big changes right away. He'll wait a couple days. But a lot of Vanguard people that we've spoken to, off the record, I wouldn't say horrified, but I would say like shocked and nervous that there's going to be a cultural shift and that being the cheapest option is no longer going to be good enough if Vanguard's going to continue to grow. What are your thoughts about the move that they just made?
I think there isn't any question that they wouldn't bring in a person from the outside if they didn't want some sort of change of pace, at least in terms of what's going on. So let's say the three of us got that opportunity. We're coming in and we've got Salim Jacques. And I don't think we do anything to negatively touch this incredible business that we've built over the span of 50 years.
It's one of the best brands in finance.
But what else can we do? We just talked about ETFs and actively managed ETFs, right? So indexing is one thing. Actively managed ETFs is very reasonably priced. There's no reason why we charge more for actively managed than you would for a normal S&P 500 fund index, right? So there's no reason why they can't be basket fees. Aren't there different ways? Go back to, they've got 10 trillion in assets, right? So how creative do you have to be to come up with 25 or 50 basis points in terms of an idea?
Is that his mandate to come in and find more profitability?
If they wanted to keep it exactly the way it is, I don't think they're bringing in somebody else from the outside.
So that
right?
is what his...
I don't know that, but I would think so, right, Mike? I mean, I would think that. So you bring somebody else in from the outside. You're looking for something to change. Now, anytime we have major change, somebody coming in from the outside, I think it's always an issue. People get used to doing things a certain way. If within Vanguard they're becoming complacent, they're becoming a little tired, or think, oh, that's the way we do it here at Vanguard, that's not the right attitude.
There was internal dissent over ETFs. ETFs ended up being one of the best in Vanguard Vogel despised the idea. I think to the end, he just was not a fan of anything that enabled you to create more. But it's a great business for them, and they're serving people. So internal dissent in a firm is good because some good things come out of that, provided it's with the best intentions of clients, which I think the ETF business was for Vanguard. And by the way, thank God for them that they did it, because we just talked about 82 months in a row of flows out of actively managed mutual funds.
Where would they be?
Yeah. So Bogle and Vanguard massively disruptive for the better. One of the best things to ever happen to individual investors, obviously. And there was a race at the bottom that they started, and we're at the bottom. There is only a limit to how few basis points you could charge on an ETF. And so now what else?
Well, I'll tell you one thing. There are a lot of Vanguard customers who would say they would be happy to pay higher fees if this service and tech were up to more modern standards. So maybe that's something that that he could bring to the table. That
Salim can do. Right.
yeah, which is
he's got a background in technology, I believe.
yeah.
So just that. Again, remember I said you kind of get a little bit complacent. So if the service, early part of the show, I'm talking about the priorities, right? You're not applying to have a business, but if you don't make some money, you're not going to have a business. You got to balance the profitability with easy and you deliver those to your people. That's it. There is nothing else. That's it. If you get away from those three things, your ego starts to get in the way, and you start to make mistakes, or you take your eye off the ball. If they're not delivering the service to the clients that they should be delivering the service, that by itself is something that should be able to improve.
The Bogleheads are worried that within 2 or 3 years, this thing is going to come public, and then it's going to be subject to the whims of the stock market, the quarterly earnings treadmill, the expectations of millions of shareholders who don't necessarily care about the product. It's a legitimate. I'm not saying that's what's going to happen, but that's what the people who love Vanguard and love its current private structure, that's what they worry about. Do you think that's a valid concern?
Well, yeah, wouldn't it be another reason why you'd bring somebody in from the outside, especially somebody comes from a public company?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
I think any one of these thoughts or ideas could be something I would think for Salim coming in the door new, things that he should be at least thinking about.
Yeah, should we
and
be
starting
public?
to have
Maybe
these discussions.
maybe the answer
it
is
should be
no.
a discussion.
Right.
But it should be a discussion.
Right.
Right. Every one of these things should be a discussion. Should we increase our fees by Facebook? Of course, it should be a discussion. But leaving things status quo is not what you do. And you increase the probability you're going to do that if you're promoting from within. You're bringing somebody in from the outside that's got real expertise and a different perspective than what everybody else has been used to. It's not a bad thing to shake things up.
I think right. I think people should give it a beat before they decide that this guy is the death of Vanguard. This is my personal opinion. But you know, we could end up with a situation. Could end up with a situation where all of a sudden people start to get excited about new things that Vanguard's doing or upgrades to their technology. Like, this could have a very happy ending. It doesn't necessarily have to be gloom and doom.
They didn't bring this guy in to blow the place up.
Of course not. Okay. I give them the benefit of the doubt. Meme trading. GameStop, AMC, 2 weeks ago, all of a sudden these stocks doubled and tripled overnight, and they fizzled out really fast this time. Do you think people learned? What? You think nobody ever learns?
I think it becomes gambling after a while, right? So, in other words, when do you decide you're never going to go back to the blackjack table? When do you decide that you're never going to, put everything in on black? And
I know what he did.
It's fair to back up for a minute, guys, in terms of where we were a couple of years ago with regard to GameStop and all the others, the 2, 3, 4 names, right? But at least Reddit put together a pretty good plan then. Remember that was a Melon Capital that had a humongous short in GameStop. And they did some homework on this, and they said, hey, we're going to do this, and everybody got on board and went crazy.
The apes were sophisticated.
So I gave them a lot of credit for that.
Yeah.
I gave them a lot of credit for that. Okay, now, but at what point then, I gave them credit for that. I complimented them. But then what happens, at what point you went, I forget where they started. Let's say you go from 10 to 20. Well, that's 30 minutes ago. At what point do you say, I should start to trim and take something off the table? Now, at what point at the top do you start to hedge this, have a stop loss, or do something? That's where I think they were lacking. They didn't educate their customer base to try to protect their...
Who should have done? Robinhood should have done that? In fairness, they didn't really know that much.
Should be doing something like that, but Robinhood had enough problems handling their own issues. They didn't have a fortified balance sheet. They didn't have a diversified income stream.
They had a net cap violation in the midst of their best
in the
trading
middle
day
of,
ever.
in the middle of it.
You talk about risk management, but this wasn't about that. It became tribal, and it became like, if you sell, you're gone. You're not part of the tribe anymore.
Well, you're going after the man,
right?
Yeah, the man with the institutional investment.
But they tried to stoke that again in the last 2 weeks, so very deliberately on Twitter, more so than Reddit, I think. They tried to wake that component of it up, like this is our revolution or whatever, and it fizzled in 2 days because I think they did learn something. They learned that, this doesn't work forever, so I'm going to get out before these other maniacs. And that's why it fell apart so easily.
When they did this a couple of years ago, whenever it was, they did have a plan. This time it was like, get everybody jump on board. It's kind of like, let's just go do this together.
What was the spark this time? I don't remember.
a tweet from Roaring Kitty
Oh
for the
my
first
God.
time in 3 years.
That's it. All he said was, I'm buying stock.
No, not even.
No, it was.
I'm looking
tweeted
at
a picture
It was a
of
picture of him leaning forward.
He,
A
he,
cartoon.
he tweeted a picture
I
of,
remember, yeah, I
of a
remember
kid
that.
sitting
Yeah,
up in his chair, and it just went.
We're back.
But there was a lot of option volume leading up to that, so people were preparing for this.
Somebody's getting
which
pinched.
I feel like the regulators are going to figure that out.
I think the bottom line is, as long as in gambling, like I used to teach my players, even my family, it's entertainment, right? So as long as you're disciplined and you limit yourself at the amount of money you can lose, you know what? There's nothing wrong with that. It's entertainment, and you can use the stock market for that. But it should be a limited amount of assets,
I completely agree.
right? And and you're saying I'm having fun
And I
here.
think most people are doing that. I don't think people are mortgaging their house on GameStop.
Let's hope not.
Right.
All right, you
Let's
could
hope not.
say as much or as little about this as you want, but as a leader, I wanted to just hear what your thoughts were. John, on screen, please. So this is Robert F. Kennedy with a falcon on his shoulder, an ape behind him holding another falcon or an eagle. It says Robert F. Kennedy Jr., independent for president, apes together strong.
Read the tweet.
And then I'm going to read you what he tweeted along with this image. I'm very aware of what the average retail investor has been saying about the need for greater transparency in our markets, stronger regulatory oversight, and tougher penalties for market manipulation and criminal behavior. My administration will support the ape retail rebellion. This is real, I'm not making this up. And enact aggressive Wall Street reforms. So we like that kind of manipulation. We don't like the other. Okay, got it. To match action with words, I just invested $24,000. This is a fucking Kennedy, by the way. I just invested $24,000 in GameStop from the fees I earned from suing Monsanto. I love the idea of making Monsanto support GME and the apes. We need a free and fair market. Let's punish predatory short selling to the moon. By the way, I ride with you, and I'm not leaving. I predict he'll leave. But, I mean, how much of a stunt is that? Is there a real voting bloc that's meaningful for Robert F. Kennedy by doing stuff like this? You could say no comment too.
No,
but
I don't think I've ever said no comment.
All right.
Ever.
No, I
Ever.
don't know you for saying that.
I don't ever.
So not a political opinion, but like almost like a what has this
I'll give
country
you a
come
personal
to?
opinion.
Okay.
Personal opinion. Okay, so one of my biggest concerns is that we live in a world today that is as stressful from a geopolitical perspective as we've ever seen in our life.
Yeah.
I can see the possibility of World War III 20 years ago. I could not have seen that. Worried about terrorism, but not see that. And it comes at the same time when our country is as divided as we've ever been, and at a time when I question our leadership as much as I ever have. So I've heard this guy a couple different times, and I thought.
In fairness, a worm ate part of his brain. He said this. So this is literally so.
Well, then I would ask.
So be
as a scientist, I would ask, well, how does a worm get inside your brain to be able to do something like that? I don't know.
AI. Go on.
So we have. So I thought he did enough questions, and I thought he did a good job of answering things. And frankly, I find him refreshing relative to the special candidates that are up now. So I kind of like the guy. I'm not aware of this. Now, my initial reaction is, okay, the guy does have a little bit of his brain missing.
Yeah.
From the person that I used to say, hey, I kind of like this guy. I literally kind of like this guy. To like, I got to think about this a minute. But the only thing I think of right off the top of my head is he appealing to the millennials that just like that he's going to get more votes because that's what he feels like. That's what he feels.
Is that grows or has every politician done some version of it? He just didn't have to do it.
I think so probably. I'm probably. And I'm not defending.
Yeah.
I don't like it.
Maybe it's Chris Asmus is responding to this. And that's why I thought, look at you. Very proud of you. Pull up the clip tweet and then we can move on.
So Cliff quote tweet said, "You're me one and you're me two. It may be one or the other, but I'm betting on both. Stop the job."
Keep talking to Robert.
I thought he put him on you guys. No. Hey, I would go after the guy.
Oh, no.
I would go after him.
So I think, in fairness to Kennedy, he's got, Gen Zs and millennial people running his social media. They probably talk.
Guess what? We're talking about you.
And what does he have to lose, honestly? But there's a bigger stakes version of that happening with crypto stuff in Washington, where the White House is now recognizing that crypto is a meaningful voting block amongst a demographic that Biden is not resonating with. Young people care about crypto. We could mock them and say it's stupid, but like, it's a fact. They're into this stuff. And it looks like Republicans and Democrats are now going to both be embracing pro-crypto stuff, probably to raise a lot of money, but also to energize young people. What do you think?
I mean, I agree. I think, well, the other day when Trump announced that they were going to accept crypto as
That's
part
a
of
frustrating
their
one.
campaign funds, and then I was wondering how long it'd take Biden to say something like that.
Well,
and if he said right, and if he said anything that was different from that, now you're going to make it a political issue. You don't want to be a political issue. You want to appeal to a broader range, broader spectrum.
So I think the Democrats recognize that the young people are on crypto the same place they were on gambling, on cannabis, and stop fighting it. I think the Republicans recognize a lot of these crypto projects are in red states where there's wind power. There's like Wyoming is very heavily pro. So like both sides have more incentive now to be accepting of this world, this crypto world, than they did 2 years ago, 3 years ago. And I look at the RFK thing as being like in the same mode.
I agree. It was only a year ago we had Jamie Dimon call them crypto pet rocks.
Yeah, he still hates
Bitcoin.
it.
Yeah, but they're in the business.
They're in the business.
Yeah, they're in the business. They can hate all they want, but he's still in business. He's been calling gloom and doom for a long time. By the way,
hurricane is coming.
We were gonna do this. We don't have to spend a lot of time on this. You talked about AI, and everyone's equally excited / terrified of the potential of AI. If you were worried about Sam Altman and his willingness to move fast and break things, this week we got some news that kind of confirms those fears. Some of the AI founders may be being too aggressive or caring too little about privacy. Scarlett Johansson is suing OpenAI. She's saying that they mimicked her voice after trying to make a financial deal with her. They couldn't, so they just said, well, we're going to use her voice anyway. Why her? She was in a movie called Her, where she was the voice of a mobile phone operating system that a human fell in love with. So there's some rhyme or reason to this. Forget about whether or not she'll win the lawsuit or the issues around that. It is another example of an AI founder kind of just doing whatever they want anyway. And I think you combine that with recent resignations by people from the trust and safety part of OpenAI, there's like more and more cause for concern as much as there is immediate excitement.
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. I think there's a little bit about the nature of an entrepreneur that once you become successful, that you kind of think you can do pretty much whatever you want because everybody said you're never going to get there. Is that for me? I'm busy. I'm on a show.
No, that's for me. Hang on. All right. Sorry about that.
You going to finish that magic?
No.
It's shocking that a guy that wanted to raise
It's Sam Altman. No.
a guy that wanted to raise $7 trillion doesn't play by the rules. Who would have thought?
In the beginning, I'm sure I have no doubt everybody thought this is not going to work, not going to work, not going to work. Yes, it will. Yes, it will. Yes, it will. And then at some point, you become a little bit arrogant, and you think you can kind of do whatever you want.
Yeah.
And you're going to need to make mistakes along the way where you really get your hands seriously slapped before you kind of turn around.
I don't think Scarlett Johansson suing is the type of mistake that makes Sam Altman sit up straight and say, I'm going to do this differently. Unfortunately, I feel as though something really bad has to happen before any of these AI people stop and just say, wait a minute, what are we really doing here?
I agree. I said really slap your hands. I mean, really, really slap your hands. Cut off your fingers. But the Scarlett thing is a little bit of a wake-up call.
Right.
Because of getting national attention.
Right. Do you worry? Are you equally excited and nervous about the potential of AI, or do you fall more on one side versus the other about like the immediate future of all this stuff?
No, I fall more on that. Ultimately, it's more positive. So I'm on that side.
I'm trying to also.
Yeah, well, I go back to I kind of compare it to the internet. You know, when the internet started in the mid '90s, there was a lot of question marks with regard to that. Right. And but then look at the impact that the internet had over time. We wouldn't be today without the internet. I think the AI is far more powerful, far more significant than what the internet was. And this is still like the first inning of this, right? So there's going to be slip-ups, there's going to be problems, there's going to be issues. People are going to take advantage. But that's true about almost anything.
Nothing's good or bad. There's good and there's bad. And on balance, it'll be more good.
Somebody's going to take advantage of that. But I think it's more good than bad.
I want to ask you about workplace culture and in the industry. There's an article this week about the Citibank caused flash crash with European stocks. This sounds like it could have been avoided. This is a $444 billion fat finger trade that crashed stocks. Citigroup just got the bill for that. They have to pay UK regulators. They have to pay UK regulators a pretty big fine as a result of that. But basically, they had a trader sitting at home who had the ability to do a $400 billion trade and blow through all kinds of computer warnings in the process of doing that. Why are these people sitting at home trading tens of billions of dollars for a financial institution of that size?
I think it's easy to argue, just use this as an example, Josh, for why they ought to be in a trading floor. But if you're on a trading floor and you're getting computers telling you this, careful this, careful this, careful this, you like think somebody's still going to come out and say, hey, you can't do that.
Right.
But if you're going to ignore the warnings at home, you still might be ignoring the warnings on the trading floor. And I think it comes down to, what's the argument? Should you be working from home, hybrid, et cetera? I think it comes back to the same two priorities. If you're doing a good job taking care of your clients, and you're doing it in a way where you're making a reasonable amount of profit for your particular company, and you're delivering on that, then frankly, if you're home or not at home, I don't care. I don't care where you are. But as long as you're delivering the value. Now, I were an A performer in the office or at work, and I'm a B performer at home, even though I'm still delivering my numbers, that's not acceptable. I should get paid less. But if I were getting the job done at work and I'm still getting the job done at home, I think I'm okay with that. Technology sort of allows us to do that. When I got to Ameritrade, I realized we're a technology firm. I'd rather have, because of Omaha, we weren't necessarily attracting the best technology talent in the country. So I was much more comfortable having the best technology talent like someplace else rather than in Omaha. So we had the best people doing what the job was. They weren't working from home, but they weren't, nor were they at headquarters.
CNBC has a story out this week. Millennials are quiet vacationing. Rather than asking their boss to take time off, there's a giant workaround culture. Let me read this. 78% of U.S. workers say they don't take all their PTO days, and it's highest among Gen Z workers and millennials, according to a new survey. Young professionals say they don't ask for time off because they feel pressure to meet deadlines and be productive, and they get nervous. Nearly 4 in 10 say they've taken time off without communicating it to their manager. I mean, I don't know if that's real or if it's not real. It's just a survey. It's just people self-reporting. There are people that would say, oh, I bet it's higher than 4 in 10. I think everybody does a little bit of that. If you were still running TD Ameritrade, would you look at that and still have the same level of leniency about, how many people could work from home versus how many people you actually want to see?
If all our numbers, we're still growing market share, we're still setting records in terms of profitability, we're doing what we need to do. And remember, I expect our people, our leaders to evaluate their people as well. And our people are delivering, and they work 3 days a week, and they're really giving us A-plus work or really solid work. I can live with that.
That's true.
I cannot live with it if you're working 7 days a week and they're not getting the job.
Because you're not going to have the performance if they're not working hard.
Yes. But
Here's something.
sometimes you get the job done just because you're better than some of your competition. You get away with it.
But you can't do that forever you can't hide that forever. What?
You can't reach your capacity. You can't reach your capacity.
Before we hopped on, we were talking about college sports. This big announcement that USA was going on.
Last night, the NCAA agreed that they would settle. They would be willing to settle a lawsuit for $2.7 billion, where they would go back to 2016 and pay college athletes that were competing in 2016. They agreed to that, $2.7 billion. Now, the reason why they agreed to that, now there's a lot of details on it. The reason why they agreed to that is because if you go back and look at all the individual athletes from 2016 on, and how much money that would cost, that potential number is 20 billion. So Power 5 conferences seem to be reluctantly agreeing to this because everybody's afraid of the 20 billion. But there's a lot of issues with
How does that money get divided? Where's the money going? To athletes?
They have an algorithm that they have some sort of formula that they have not released that would allow that to happen. So, for example, you're a swimmer in 2016, you get the same amount of money as the quarterback for the Ohio State national championship in 2020.
I don't think you
Is Sean getting paid? You getting checks?
I would hope so. I would hope he deserves something. I'm going to get a couple bucks out of this.
Sean was
But this is huge.
What position did you play? tackle and guard. Would you have liked to have had Joe Mowgli as your coach? That would have been pretty cool, right?
I would have worked your ass to death, buddy.
My God. Did you have fun on the show today, Joe?
Thank you, guys. It was a pleasure being on. It was an honor being
All right,
on.
so
I'm
that's
grateful for being on.
That's about the halfway point. We're going to take a brief intermission. We're going to do another hour 15. What do you think?
We're good. I'm ready to go.
Joe,
and thanks very much for welcoming Mary on.
We're so happy, Mary. We're so happy to have you. And I just want to say for people, I want to reiterate, and then we're going to get your favorites, which I'll answer that in a second. But I just want to reiterate to people, you're somebody that I think generations of people on the street learn from your example. People that want to be leaders, people that want to become leaders. I think there's a lot they could learn from watching you and listening to you. And I like that you're starting to do more, I don't want to say content, that's what you did. I like that you're starting to speak more on that topic now. And I hope you do even more of it going forward. So I know you have some plans to do that.
But I appreciate that, Josh.
Yeah,
Thank you, Josh and
absolutely.
Michael.
So we always end the show with favorites. We ask people what books they're reading, what shows they're watching, what movies. Just give us something that you think the audience should know more about. What are you into?
I'm reading the Fall magazine that Paragraph, which is the political changes in the United States from 1974 to today. It's about 500 pages. I've been reading it for about a year. I'm up to page 80. I'm struggling to get through it.
Doesn't sound like that much
But it's it's actually a pretty good book.
Okay. Michael, you have a favorite for us this week?
Yeah, I finally saw 2014 Equalizer. It's been a decade.
Oh, it's on Netflix.
It's on
now.
Netflix.
Denzel, big Denzel fan?
Yeah, I am. He's a Fordham guy.
That's right.
It's
That's right.
Denzel playing John Wick. It's great.
Have you seen that?
under
I love it.
It's great.
That's what we're doing.
I started watching it.
So in the third one, he goes to Italy. So
I like Venice.
pretty good. I rewatched House of the Dragon on Max to get ready for the new season that's coming out in June.
You're a sicko. How long does that take you?
Game of Thrones?
It's the Game of Thrones prequel series that came out 2 years ago. It's better than I remembered it being when I first watched it. The thing with these shows is they're so densely packed. You have to, and with so many characters and so much going on.
That's a no-phone show.
Yeah, it's a no-phone show, and you have to watch it twice. And I think the new season is going to be a sensation this summer. I think it's going to be like one of their biggest shows of the year. So I love rewatching it. So I highly recommend for everyone that hasn't seen it yet to get ready for season 2. Guys, what are we thinking?
Oh, unlock. Plug.
Is that the last thing we have to do?
Yeah.
All right. So we started a channel for financial advisors and people that work in wealth management. We're not gonna. We have to really do things in public. Number one, stop talking about financial advisor topics on the compound. Most of us aren't financial advisors. We don't want to do that stuff. Okay, noted. We're not gonna do that. But we also heard, why won't you guys talk more about financial advisory industry stuff? We want to hear that stuff. We want to hear about practice management and technology and things that financial advisors are doing. Okay, so that is what the Unlock is. It's advisorunlock.com. You could subscribe. You'll get our updates there. And it's got its own YouTube channel. So we'll keep this stuff away from the compound. So if you are an advisor and you're a fan of the compound, this is another thing you can follow. And if you're not into advisory stuff, feel free not to follow. But I wanted to make sure that you guys knew that was available. Did I explain that well, Rob?
Yeah.
Covered all the bases?
Good.
All right. Guys, Howard, thanks for Joe Moglia and Mary. Thank you so much for coming up here. We had the best time. We really appreciate everything you've done for this industry and all of your leadership, and we hope to follow in your example for years to come. And we hope we have you back on sometime soon. Does that sound good?
I look forward to it.
What are you doing next week?
Okay, come back.
This is the Compound and Friends. It's a financial podcast.
Have an awesome weekend. We'll talk to you soon.
What's up, Craven? What's up, Penguin?
Today's show is brought to you by Franklin's Milk, a company with storied history. Ben, do you know when they opened their doors?
1776.
Close. 1947.
They were the post-World War II wave. Pretty good there.
So Franklin now has 72 ETFs with over $20 billion in U.S. ETF assets, including the Franklin International Core
Just build
Dividend
carriers.
ETF, ticker DIVI. Ben, International.
All you gotta do.
So hot right now? Premature to say.
Get a lot of upgrades. I can't even be that mad. True. Just keeps all inning. This wasn't an all-in game, to be fair. He did play a macro game. I'll give him that. I'll give him credit where credit is due. Dude, the new mothership is so much better. Like, it sucks that it doesn't cloak forever, but like, being able to cloak and time warp and even recall all whenever you want, pretty much, on a timer, is like very nice. Yeah, I mean, mainly just be able to cloak whenever you want without having to worry about energy. Like, time warp's so good. Especially if you can force a fight. And it's really easy to force a fight with carriers. Sort of. I mean, this dude's got 4K, 1K, and I'm just like 150 supply. I mean, he built ultras, and I just don't have any ground units at all. How many hydras? 35 hydras? Yeah, that ain't enough. Like, look right there, that mothership allowed all my carriers to get their interceptors out. Dear God, look at the resources lost. Why do eggs take so long to kill? Okay, that's gonna be it for me today. Those are pretty bad games, but it is what it is.